swear there was another one here somewhere. Oh, there's two of them now? Danganronpa 2 Goodbye Despair is the greatest sequel of all time. And I know, laugh it up, make your comments now, but you'll see. Am I right in assuming you've already played the second game? Okay. You've also already watched the catalyst that led to this clunky sequel? Good stuff. Then we have no time to waste. Where else to start than unraveling the mystery of Jabberwock Island? Not the big canonical one. Ah, it's a giant Chicory! I'm talking about the island itself. What makes this crazy location so twistedly perfect for a killing game? How does it reinforce the stakes and create such a sharp contrast to the dark reality of the situation? And how does that godforsaken mechanical bear make a return with a pink bunny hanging from the ceiling and an all new set of motives? All that and more after our buddy Monokuma takes it away. Jabberwock Island. That's where this game takes place. A sprawling set of 6 islands and a whole meal of attractions to visit. My question is, why? No, seriously. Who made this call? On the surface, as I'm sure many of you personally recall, I'm sure as shit no they didn't, gazing upon this landscape and honestly just hearing the idea Danganronpa but on Big Island probably sent a few eyebrow raisers your way. I mean, the first game was in a dense, claustrophobic area with not even a shred of outside world sprinkled in. And now, we're thrown into a place that's 90% open areas, 10% buildings that still have windows that lead to said open areas. God damn it! What else is there to say? Certainly unusual, but here's where I tell you there's something special about it. You see, unlike Hope's Peak, which represented a familiar yet clinical environment and contrasts order with chaos, Jabberwock Island oozes relaxation and comfort, leading to a contrast of bliss with fear. In the first game, it was the people around us that gave us moments of levity in an abnormal world, but here, it's the island itself that lets us breathe. The world of Danganronpa was once dense, metallic, and sealed off from the outside world. No matter which way you looked at it, there was a constant theme of containment present. Everything felt the same, leaving only the people around you to share in the tension. In a beautifully rotten way, it heightened that paranoia and locked you in the school version of a pressure cooker until a bubble popped inside. And that was your motivation. Everyone wanted to leave because being trapped here was imprisoning, so escaping meant you'd see the sky again. Isn't that weird? I'm sure we're thinking the same here, because now we have that. A vibrant, colourful, open-air resort designed for your wildest dreams. Sprawling beaches so bright you can barely look at them. A blue sky free from all things grey and depressing. And a theme park? What the hell? How wonderful. That freedom, such bliss. And it's all fake. An elaborate ruse to make this killing game just that much more tragic. Because hey, no matter how open this place may be, you're still trapped. The illusion of freedom is just that, an illusion, and a great one at that, because it weaponizes our previous experiences with this franchise, shatters those expectations, stuns us, then leaps in with a critical hit as the first body hits the floor. It's amazing, and alongside that, there's plenty to be said about the emotional contrast. Hope's Peak matched its tone to its horror, with, you know, the walls that look too clean, and the corridors narrow as Byakuya's waistline. Until the second game, you get the gist. The murders felt almost at home in a place this eerie, but compare that to what we're looking at now, and it raises a different method of contrast, a weaponized kind. A murder happens in a bright beach house and a room with grapes on the walls, for God's sake. I mean, who's making this stuff up? You're walking past cheery theme park rides and inviting diners while wondering who made the quirky musician hang herself. And this juxtaposition creates a very different type of unease. It's not quite dread. I suppose, wait, let me consult my dictionary. It's cognitive dissonance. You want to feel relaxed, and your brain really should be enjoying the scenery, but for some reason you can't. Probably the murder. It's like your brain's rebelling against the disjointed visuals and tone, which honestly is an incredibly effective thing from a horror standpoint, especially in a visual novel where aesthetic does half the heavy lifting. The core of it is, Jabberwock Island is a contradiction wrapped in sunlight. On the surface, it's an idyllic paradise, but beneath it lies a deep, artificial stillness, something uncanny in its arrangement. This place is a stage to broadcast not only the killing game, but how expansiveness can feel hollow, and that hollowness results in pain. Pain induces loss, and loss ignites despair. The island's brilliance lies in its ability to mask that tension behind all this fancy spectacle and create areas that each feel tailored to induce comfort. You've got the library, the Rocket Punch Market, the airport, and the beach house that just so happens to have a corpse slumped against it, all lulling the player into momentary peace, even amusement depending on your level of autism. But that world is too quiet, don't you think? Characters rarely seem to mention the broader logistics of the island because, quite frankly, that shit ain't meant to be questioned. Just don't think about it. That artificiality is intentional, of course, relevant to later plot discoveries, but right off the bat, it's used as ambient discomfort forcibly woven into every scene, you know? It's almost supposed to feel slightly off, and that offness becomes the emotional glue of the story, simmering beneath the humor and bonding moments until time is right to reveal why this place feels so liminal and so wrong. As I said, the expansiveness of the island only leads to a devalue of that freedom, revealing truly how hollow that freedom is in the end. That growing tension only creates more internal pressure on each character, who they are, what they believe, and how far they're willing to go to escape something that, visually, doesn't even look like a prison. Maybe that's the island's biggest strength, its role in shaping character behaviour. The space gives them time to settle and to form friendships and let that precious guard down until the game twists the knife too many times. All these murders just happening in broad daylight like it's just Tuesday, under that blazing sky that almost makes the horror of the situation feel misplaced or even childish. And that exact mismatch is what makes it hit like kaboom! Even harder, that's what I mean. Never once does the setting feel like it's transforming into something sinister. Even in those godforsaken strawberry and grape houses, it always stays sunny, or inviting, or at least colourful. There's no sun. It stays colourful. It all comes down to the players, both the characters and the audience, who begin to see it differently. The world hasn't changed. Everything you've come across was always there. It wasn't demon magic Gundam, you dolt. The only one that's changed on this island is you, mate. I mean, how do I wrap this in a conclusion? Should I? I wanted the videos to be a bit narrative focused, you know, more fancy words than that. But I guess we'll just talk about Monokuma! Why back? Why is he back? I like that he's back, but why is he though? Monokuma's return is pretty much a given, because what's a killing game without him? Boring, that's what it is, it's boring. So of course, here he is, armed with the same tired antics and somehow still calling it a sequel. As I've said before, Monokuma is crucial to framing each murder as just another punchline, right? The way he shrugs off deaths and cheers for more carnage adds this twisted energy to the whole thing, because he's the chaotic bridge between the grim reality and a cartoonish ideology, and without him, the story loses that contrast entirely. He's the reason Junko's plan even works. I mean, you can't drag symbols of hope into despair without hitting him over the head with tonal whiplash a few times, making murders feel ridiculous and the idea of escape almost laughable. That was the formula the first game nailed, and here it is again, reheated for round 2. Cheers, Teru. But there's something different this time, isn't there? Because we've already met him, and because that surprise factor is gone, the writers had to layer him up. Oh yeah, he's still the same murder-loving teddy bear, but now there's an added effort to keep him feeling fresh, even when he's reusing the same old material. In Danganronpa 2, him returning is just a reminder of all the harrowing things we've been through, and also the funny. So of course, we feel some level of connection to him. It's Monokuma and Byakuya. Those are the two constants here, and yes, this is relevant, I swear. They both represent familiarity, just in different flavors. Monokuma shows up as the headmaster again, so we don't need to waste time guessing who the villain is. We know his game, his character, and his tendency to ship teenage students. That means we can shift our focus to the new cast instead of relearning the rules. Byakuya is a face we remember, so I don't know about anyone else, but he was my cheeky comfort. You couldn't drag me away from that smug bastard unless you, like, ripped his guts out in front of me. Ah, damn it. Main point, these two are two sides of the same nostalgia-coated coin. That's why when Byakuya dies, it hits a little different. It tells us very clearly they're not holding back. As far as we know, this is the same guy who survived an entire killing game just to get one tapped first thing second time round. It makes us question whether Monokuma is even going to be the main antagonist for long, and we're right. Future Foundation! Boom! And we're forced to question more than just the bear. But there's something later in the game that makes me realise why Monokuma's return wasn't boring or cliche, and that's when he goes dead silent. We know Monokuma as the loud-mouthed, foul-mouthed cretin, and by this point in the game, we're pretty sure no one else is going to die, so naturally, the villain should stay standing too, right? I mean, if he goes down, it'll be in some massive final battle, Avengers Endgame-ass shit shtick, except no. He just Shuts up, bro. No banter or nothing. He just starts dropping real information and we're left going, wait, since when does Monokuma tell the truth? Feels wrong. And I mean, it's pretty genius, really. Monokuma's whole purpose was to lull us in with familiarity with his usual tricks and recycled showboating, but the game subverts all of it by making him uncomfortably quiet when it matters most. Just think about the pattern we've been trained to expect, you know? Monokuma appears, right? Murders happen, sure, yeah, and then he mocks, he meddles, big dramatic reveal, final showdown, the end, right? But this time, that format unravels. He's still there, he's still dangerous, but something's broken, he's acting off script a little bit. And that's what makes his return in Danganronpa 2 feel not just justified, but essential to the plot. Jolly good show, I imagine. Where's my medal for those analysing skills, am I right? Oh, and there's also that Usami Monomi bunny thing pops up every so often, so fucking annoying. But I suppose I can say something nice about her if I turn off the part of my brain with all my honest opinions. Usami is what the Future Foundation thought hope looked like, or at least what they thought would inspire hope. Their goal was not only to rehabilitate fractured minds and basically shove a new reality in there, but also to help them become the symbols of hope they were destined to be, so they can fight whatever madness was going on in reality. Therefore, they needed an observer to look over the Neo World program and also keep morale somewhat high. Usami was finding her way there until that bastard Monokuma swooped in and made everything actually fun. Listen, alright, Monomi is okay, but she's wimpy, isn't she? I'd imagine that diary isn't only for personal use, but still, she represents an interesting concept. Monomi never fights back, at least for a long while. That's what's tragic about her, because her entire presence is program powerlessness. She wants to do good and keep the peace, but she just can't. Simple as. All of her abilities are restricted, making her basically order without teeth, where Monokuma is like that golden chaos with charisma, if you wanted to get poetic with it. Monokuma's presence feeds on all that juicy attention, control, and dread. Monomi's existence quietly withers, and over time, we begin to ignore her, just like the students do. Her lack of power makes her completely invisible, because what Monomi represents shifts as the game progresses. She starts as a stand-in for the teacher role, and then she grows into something oddly significant, a witness. She's present for every act of violence and every injustice and every breakdown in the group. She's still well annoying, but she remains nonetheless. And that kind of endurance, the willingness to stand for hope, even when no one listens, is its own form of power, no matter how silent. Which brings us to the Chiaki execution. Monomi's decision to die with Chiaki isn't some brave last-second redemption written in crayon. It's a culmination of everything she's been trying to do. She knows Chiaki is the only real hope left, the one the class has truly bonded with, and she chooses with full awareness to stand beside her. It's the first time Monomi acts with total agency, and we'll get to that idea of artificial sentience later, because Monomi herself is a huge question mark for whether code can break itself. Either way, that's what makes her death matter. She finally embodies the hope she was designed to represent. End of. Chapter 2 is upon us, mate. Oh my, it's so long, but it's so much better than this, right? It's so much better than Chapter 1. I don't even know why I started with this. I'm glad to be moving there anyway, so expect plenty of insight into the wonderfully colourful cast we're presented at this time. For all you structure fanatics out there, I'll start with my opinion, and then lead into some awesome in-depth analysis, some simple structure, but a meaningful one. So, be ready. Monokuma, take it away! Yeah, right. Fade it all out. Hell yeah. Well, look what we, look at this. Look what it is. It's you. Hajime Hinata! Where else to start but our beloved protagonist? Oh, well, apparently not. He's getting his own chapter for some reason. You know what? I'm not gonna question it. Chiaki Nanami! Dude, Chiaki's fully like the best character ever though, right? She's the most comforting motherfucker I've ever had the pleasure of being with. She's got that calm tone with the soft-spoken words of encouragement, and she's a gamer. She's also the glue that keeps us all together, especially when Nagito does his Nagito thing and we're back at each other's throats. She's the one reminding us why we're fighting, giving everyone, especially Hajime, ooh. That little push to keep going. Even after she dies, she keeps showing up in Hajime's mind, gently nudging him forward. Without her, I don't think he or we could have kept it together. So honestly, yeah, we probably owe all of Danganronpa 2 to her. And what really sells her character isn't just her insight or the leadership, but it's how she helps us, right? She never invalidates anyone's emotions, and instead, she understands them. She acknowledges the pain we're in, sets aside what can't be handled in the moment, and helps us focus on what needs to happen. She moves things forward because she cares, and believe you me, if she didn't, the whole thing would fall apart. Now, yeah, elephant in the room, she's an AI, right? But like, who cares? She's more human than most of the actual people in the game, and Danganronpa is known to toy with realism and redefine what it means to be sentient. Think about Alter Ego and Monokuma. One's an AI, the other's being controlled by a separate person, yet we still treat Junko and Monokuma as two separate entities, and Alter Ego like a friend. And like, Chiaki's presence is too impactful to discard as just programming, and whether she was meant to feel or not, she does, and that's what matters most, right? There's also the whole Kyoko clone theory, how Chiaki fills the same narrative role as the quiet, hyper-competent anchor for the protagonist, and yeah, I see the parallels, right? But it's the execution that makes Chiaki feel unique. Her presence as a more collaborative, emotionally aware, and vulnerable detective. She uses what she knows to guide rather than lead, and despite her insight from Monami, the fact she never once flaunts it says something about the character she was both programmed by the Future Foundation to be, and who she eventually developed into on her own. And she's more humble than lavender hair anyway, as opposed to placing herself above the group and running off on her own, Chiaki places herself in it alongside us. And it gets even deeper somehow, as Chiaki's here and that's cool and all, but she represents so much more. I mean, she is on paper a soulless AI program, plain and simple that, but in practice, she's a litmus test, one of sentience, identity, and what it means to be real. Her existence forces the player and Hajime to confront an uncomfortable truth. If she wasn't real, then what is? It's a weird question, innit? But it's the game's whole trick. Everyone in the simulation is technically a fragment, a digital replica of a real person, yet Chiaki is treated exactly the same, even mourned after her death like all those before her. If we're going to invalidate Chiaki's humanity just because she wasn't real, then we're forced to question every other character's existence, every death and every moment of joy or grief. Was any of it truly real, and by whose definition? The answer Danganronpa 2 subtly offers is it doesn't matter. Chiaki's emotions, decisions, and sacrifices had real consequences. She felt pain and love just like any other person, and pretty much broke through her entire programming in her final moments, not just to fight back, but to stand for something greater than herself. In a story obsessed with the question of hope versus despair, she represents hope not as a thematic force, but as an act of will. Chiaki proves that consciousness isn't something granted, but something chosen. And guess what? Even more insight. Time to talk about Hajime's identity crisis, because Chiaki is a big part in it. Wait, she didn't cause it, she helped it be better. Her AI status is a mirror for what Hajime experiences near the end of the game. Just as Hajime grapples with his humanity when faced with the revelation of Izuru Kamakura, Chiaki exists to reflect the idea that your origins don't define your worth. You are who you choose to be, no matter how artificial or broken you feel. It's no coincidence she becomes the emotional catalyst for Hajime's transformation into the ultimate hope. God damn! So yeah, Chiaki's alright because she's the most human, despite not being human. All that stuff. Let's move on. Fuyuhiko Kuzuryu, also known as Jesus Christ the Messiah. Dude, he's so cool. Easily one of the most likable characters in the game, and hands down the most visibly developed. His arc is practically mapped out for you, and you can pinpoint to the exact moments that define each stage of growth. And it's pretty beautiful and fitting for his character. I mean, he's the ultimate Yakuza. Of course, his transformation would be loud, painful, and deliberate. He starts out as a full-blown, cold-blooded asshole. You know the type. Just such a drag. Like, mate, chill out, will ya? His walls are up so high, it's practically a rite of passage for first-time players to immediately write him off. But thankfully, all that flips on its head after Chapter 2. The loss of Peko completely wrecks him. It smashes through that hard exterior and exposes what's really there all along. A scared, grieving boy who just lost the only person he truly trusted. That's what makes his arc so powerful. He doesn't just say he wants to change. He takes immediate and brutal action to prove it. He disembowels himself in front of the others, which is, okay, too far, but it's a step somewhere? If we take the meaning behind it, it makes much more sense. It's desperation. It's sheer, unfiltered sincerity of someone who's trying to crawl their way out of the darkness they've lived in for so long. He thinks change has to be dramatic and life-threatening even, because he was raised on all or nothing values. You're either loyal or you're nothing, so deal with it. And you see that same intensity in how he acts afterward. He becomes too good, hyper-aware, constantly trying to prove himself useful and dependable. He starts hanging out at the hospital all the time to keep the others safe, and when he'd usually bite your head off, he's surprisingly cool. He's trying so hard not to be that version of himself again, it's like he's sprinting in the opposite direction just to prove he can. But of course, nobody can keep that up forever. Eventually the cracks start to show, and yeah, Fuyuhiko lashes out again a few times later in the game, but it's completely different, because it's not the same guy we met at the start. These aren't the tantrums of a selfish prick who doesn't care, rather they're the reactions of someone who does care, who's frustrated because he cares. Maybe a little too much. And that's growth right there, ladies and gentlemen. Fuyuhiko rebuilds who he once was into something better, rather than erasing it entirely. And he does so by learning when to hold back, when to speak up, and how to value others without compromising the core of who he is. He's still short-tempered with that vicious 4'2" bite, but he's in a hell of a lot more control of it. And even further, what really makes his arc land is how perfectly it fits with where he came from. As the heir to the Yakuza family, he's grown up in a world of absolutes, where being wrong could literally get you killed, so when he decides to change, he throws himself into it like his life still depends on it. Like, mate, chill, you've thrown yourself into enough fights you can't win, so get some bloody rest. Now compare that to someone like, say, Kazuishi, who might be just as desperate to change, but will likely fumble through it sloppily. Fuyuhiko's method is much more disciplined and much more serious, but in the end, it's all human though, innit? Everyone who tries hard enough in their own unique way will eventually reach their destination. Fuyuhiko might just get there much faster, and that's commendable in itself. I'm still sat here blabbering on about his dead best mate, while he's probably already on his road to presidency or something. Because in reality, change isn't about being perfect really, it's about trying, failing, and slowly becoming someone better with each step forward. Fuyuhiko's whole story long run tells us something universally true. The person you want to become isn't someone you magically transform into overnight, it's someone you grow into, someone who learns from pain and failure, and eventually, like him, you'll find a version of yourself that feels right. But enough of that. Who's ready for some hate? That's what I'm saying. Akane Owari, everyone, the Yasuhiro of Jabberwock Island. Okay, she's only here to be the damn, how did she survive? Ah, that's crazy person. A character whose existence feels less essential to the plot, and more like the olives that come with a really fancy meal Teru Teru would make. And much like olives, Akane is hit or miss, and it just so happens she didn't hit with me. Now that's great, that can be really good, if she had more going on under the proverbial hood. She's written primarily as comic relief, but most of her humour falls into the tired, clueless sex joke routine. Like, how many times does she have to ask a dude to grope her for laughs? It's that whole, she doesn't understand what she's saying, haha, funny thing, and it's cheap. She is fan service, second only to our beloved Slip Slibbity Slasher. I'm sure you're picturing her right now. But she's pretty damn close, and of course, there is a difference between a few spicy one-liners and being a walking punchline about your own body. Sure, I laughed once or twice, I'm no prude, I'm not above a dumb joke, and her and Nekomaru doing it as a running gag was actually pretty funny because it worked as a self-aware joke with no clear answer, but most of the time, it absolutely felt cheap. That's where my frustration lies with Akane. She could have been so much more. Her backstory, revealed in free time events, is tragic and grounded, growing up exploited and undereducated, forcing her to use her body and talents to survive. That's a decent weighty setup, but it ends up feeling like a retroactive justification, as in, it doesn't make her behaviour make sense as much as it tries to explain it anyway with some half-assed excuse. It's not, we wrote her as a trauma survivor, so here's how that shapes her awkwardness and shifting attitude. It's, we wrote her to be weirdly sexual and ditzy, and now we need an excuse, which, come on, big no-no, it's well boring. And even her talent, Ultimate Gymnast, barely feels utilised. She likes food, she can smell things good, and she's agile, but it's never tied together with any clever insight or relevance to the trials. Compare her to someone like Yasuhiro, who at least acted in line with his talent. He was a crackpot clairvoyant running on 2 puffs of weed who believed in supernatural nonsense. Therefore, he ran off scared thinking any mild threat was a ghost and constantly tried to charge ridiculous cash for a palm reading. His quirks made sense for who he was, even if I didn't like his character all that much, but Akane just lacks all of that. You could follow that logic, but her tricks just feel plucked from a hat. But despite all that, she does serve a purpose, and that's through her bond with Nekomaru. He's a disciplined fellow with the body of Zeus, and she loves training. He's got that motivation, and Akane falls right into that bracket. Their dynamic is simple but wholesome. She pushes herself, and he pushes her harder. You can tell they have a lot of respect for each other, and it's sweet. So when Nekomaru sacrifices himself for her, it's one of the only moments we see something deeper in her. She feels guilty and a little rattled, but then again, that's his arc, not hers. Akane, in that moment, exists more of a catalyst for someone else's growth than a character on her own. Her pushing the button at the end feels like closure for him, not her. And while that full circle moment mirrors other pairings, Hajime and Chiaki, Fuyuhiko and Peko, the difference is, all those other characters had independent development outside of their pairings. Akane doesn't. Remove Nekomaru from the story, and she's just kinda there. Take Sonya and Gundam. They clearly mean something to each other and their bond matters, but Sonya is still Sonya and Gundam is still Gundam, even when they're apart. Akane, in contrast, exists in Nekomaru's orbit and barely outside of it. In the end, Akane has much more potential that's never built on. Her jokes would be fine if there was more to her than that, but when every other character sparks fond memories and she just reminds me of all the times I sighed at the screen, yeah, that's a problem. I firmly believe you could replace it with a character that embodies the same love and strength of survival, but with clearer depth or unique contribution, and the game would only benefit. Still, I don't hate her by any means, she's just not that interesting. If nothing else, Akane shows us what not to do when writing a character, how to not treat trauma like an excuse, and how to not rely on fan service as a personality, and that's definitely a lesson worth learning. But let's bring the tone back up, shall we? Oh my, everything that's here and alive right now is Kazuishi Soda. Brother, Kazuishi is my favourite character in Danganronpa 2, and you cannot convince me otherwise. Weirdly enough, on the surface, he is like a Yasuhiro clone, pretty goofy, panicky, and dissolves at the sight of danger, and totally out of his depth. But what sets Kazuishi apart is beneath all the dramatic freakouts and awkward lines is a genuinely sweet, attentive, and painfully normal kid who never asked for any of this. He's a teenager, that's it. He likes to tinker, mess around, build stuff, fix it, and just exist doing whatever without having to deal with, murder. That innocence, his desire to just be, gets crushed by the situation he's forced into. He breaks under pressure just as any of us would, but he's always trying somewhat, always moving forward in his own clumsy, eager way. And the most tragic thing about him isn't actually him, but the people around him. They treat him like shit for no reason. Take his crush on Sonya as a blaring, ringing, deafening example. It's awkward and 1,000 times uncomfy, and he says weird stuff on the daily. And look, I'm not defending anything, right? He is a creep at times, but the way it's handled matters. Nobody, and I mean nobody, ever actually teaches Kazuishi how to behave differently. He's never given a proper reality check, just brushed off, eye-rolled, or insulted. Calling someone an asshole doesn't magically help them grow. If someone pulled him aside and said, mate, that's not okay, and he still continued, he's on the chopping block. But assuming he'd take that advice, because let's face it, a dummy like Kazuishi needs blunt communication before he understands a lick of what you're trying to tell him, I think it could have worked out. So yes, I'm saying it. Kazuishi deserves Sonya more than Gundam, and yes, I'm emotionally involved in the love triangle of these three PNGs. Welcome to the channel. But yeah, our Kazuishi is far from emotionally fluent, and he doesn't pick up on signals well by any means. He's the kind of person that needs someone like Hajime to steer him in the right directions, but he doesn't get that. Instead, he asks him if they can go stare at the girls at the beach, and Hajime's like, this is wrong, but yep. Bad Hajime, minus brownie points, do better bro. So instead of learning how to respect boundaries in a meaningful way, he gets stuck in this awkward loop of one-sided infatuation and oblivious behaviour. And while it's absolutely fair to criticise his objectifying moments, like trying to sneak a peek at Sonya, which is bad, it's important to note that he never crosses physical boundaries. For Kazuishi, admiration is exactly that, admiration. He'd never put his hands on something so precious unless it were an engine or exhaust pipe, so it's clear there's some basic mental boundaries he works with, which is a good place to start. And that's something I love about him. Kazuishi is just normal. He's got nothing fancy going on like the rest of them, and he's about as socially aware as a bag of rocks like the majority of us sat at home watching YouTube videos all day. He just grew up in an average home, found something he loved doing, and got really good at it. He's just a scared kid trying to navigate chaos with a wrench in one hand and a nervous laugh in the other. Even when he's suspicious of Hajime, he always clarifies it's nothing personal, he's just scared, and that's the natural reaction, of course. Fear clouds his judgment, but he never lashes out with hatred. He wants the best for everyone, even if he's not always sure how to show it. His heart's totally in the right place, and that's what matters most. But still, you have kinda gotta tone it down a bit, mate. Where other characters have all this pressure or deep-rooted trauma shaping their worldview, Kazuishi stands out by being the everyman. He's flawed and all this jazz, but he's also relatable, loyal, and full of potential. All he needed was someone to help him channel that energy, to show him how to be better, and I genuinely believe he would have stepped up, man. So no, he's not the best written character in Danganronpa 2, far from it. But he is, in my opinion, the most underrated and misunderstood. He's raw potential wrapped in bubblegum pink hair. Wait, god damn it, why is it always the lavender hair people that are the most engaging? Oh no, it's cool though. Man just wanted to fix a car, not get murdered by a robot bear. What a shit way to end that paragraph, bro. What am I even doing? Byakuya Togami. Byakuya, as we think we know him, makes a surprising reappearance in Danganronpa 2, except it's not really him, and that single twist recontextualizes everything in a way that's quietly brilliant. Here's your hook. Let's get into it. This version of Byakuya we meet at the start of the game is almost jarring if you're coming straight off the first. He's too nice, isn't he? Obnoxiously so. Like, why does he care so much about literally nothing for people we barely know about? Not only is that not Byakuya, it's also just not. Who cares? Feels like bad writing. Like someone wrote his entire personality to make him more likable and misunderstood what made the real Byakuya compelling in the first place. But that first impression is why it's fucking awesome. Because he's not Byakuya. He's the ultimate imposter. Dun dun dun! That reveal reframes the entire first case and this character as a quietly selfless, incredibly noble presence 5 chapters in. This man, whoever the hell he is, didn't step into Byakuya's shoes to manipulate the group or do whatever the real Byakuya does. He did it just to protect them. He used that identity as a way of raising hope as an ultimate among ultimates. Having someone with such a high stature as Byakuya as your leader must be special, and he understood that. Though his version of Byakuya is strict but kind, firm but never cruel, he truly feels like a leader, and when it comes down to life or death, he chose death. To protect Nagito, no less. This guy threw himself in front of a meat skewer to protect Nagito Komaeda. Man, fuck this guy, am I right? Even posthumously, his presence lingers. Once you know who he really was, the guilt hits like 50 teru-terus in a frying pan. Why did I write that? The trust we barely gave him and the doubts we had, all the jokes we made, it lands differently now. Because what seemed like mischaracterization was actually a purposeful subversion, an expertly set trap that banked our assumptions. It wanted us to cry bad writing, so it could later turn around and go, nope, you idiots! The fact that this one chapter arc manages to pack in a moral turnaround, a murder twist, and a full-on redemption without even revealing his real name is pretty special. And somehow it works, right? The ultimate imposter honors Byakuya for some reason. Like, he seems to do everything wrong, saving Nagito, admiring the asshole Byakuya, yet he's so sweet and kind, it's kinda hard to hate him. It's easier to hate yourself for looking back on him annoyed for the last 5 chapters. But ultimately, he steps into a different legacy, not to upstage it, but to protect others in the only way he knows how. So yeah, he's pretty sick. But you know who else is pretty sick? Oh, I just read the next line. Yeah, no. Mikan Sumiki. I can't be arsed anymore, man. Right, what is it with this game and relentless fan service? Mikan is one of the most frustrating characters in Danganronpa 2 because somehow she manages to be both horribly overdone and weirdly brilliant. She's basically a human pick-a-mix. One moment you're sighing at her antics and the next you're halfway to rewriting your opinion entirely. God help me. Let's start with the obvious. Her early game betrayal is nothing short of hentai tier bait, and if you disagree with me, you're dumb and gay.
Oh, fuck.
Tripping every 5 seconds, my lord, and the bizarrely convenient camera angles. Like, mate, those food dishes falling just right. Like, come on, get a hold of yourself. It's embarrassing. She's introduced as the walking punchline of the game, built for degenerate Toko genocide jack lovers, but the ones that only like the horniness and not the actual character development. Except instead of being edgy or funny like Toko and that freak, Mikan just falls over. Again, and again, and again. Like, how many times you need to flash back to her on the floor and call it evidence, brother? It's just excessive by this point. But here's the thing. Fucking movie poster. If that's all there was to her, I wouldn't be sitting here writing this, because despite that, Mikan ends up being incredible, kinda. And thankfully, it wasn't in the video game wanting me to like her, so I did kinda way. But because she actually earns it. By chapter 3, I shed a tear, not for the death of my friends, but because she's actually likable. I mean, credit where credit's due. She's been a huge help with those autopsies so far, silently carrying the weight of each case while still being awkward as hell to talk to. But when the 3rd trial hits us, and when Nagito corners her and the pressure builds, we get one of the best breakdowns in the whole game. And yeah, her voice might still drive me mad, but that scene is phenomenally written. It reveals everything, the remembering disease, her past in the real world, and her connection to despair, and the truth behind her cloying behaviour. Suddenly, everything's seen differently, and now her actions are reframed as symptoms of deep systemic abuse at the hands of her peers, and by extension, us. Mikan was written to be annoying because that's all she was allowed to be, and it's our fault. Hell yeah, I love this plot twist. Make me guilty more often. Ah, mate, don't you see? She'd been conditioned to be somebody nobody wanted to be around, and she played into that role because rejection was all she'd ever known. But regaining her memories means she also remembers who she was before, someone deeply in love with Junko, already fallen into despair. And now that she's whole again, that old personality takes over. Imagine being hated so much you force yourself to be annoying, therefore making yourself even more hated, forcing yourself to become even more annoying because that's all people see you as. Talk about a tragic cycle, jeez. And thank you, Mikan, for this juicy moral dilemma. We hate her for what she's done, but we also feel guilty. The game plays with that tension masterfully. Yes, of course, Mikan had been corrupted by Junko, but how did she get there? Was it entirely her fault? Or did years of mistreatment make her easy prey for someone offering twisted validation? And in that light, can we really blame her? Her presence raises uncomfortable questions. If she was sent to the Neo-World program to be rehabilitated, what does it say about us that we instantly dismissed her? If she never had the chance to heal, did we help her fall again? Of course, it's untrue, but that moment raises those questions nonetheless, and it's worth noting that it does. Either way, something got her to that dark place, and I doubt whoever we were before our minds were erased helped in any way. People fall into the ultimate despair for different reasons, as I've read. Some for power, some want to watch the world burn, some want to take part, but some long for a sense of belonging, and that can only be achieved on such a desperate level if one was constantly ostracised even among those she was seen as akin to. Poor Mikan, innit? So to wrap it all up in a band-aid for all the annoyance she caused early on, and I mean serious annoyance, her character isn't that bad. That single chapter reclaims so much that my final verdict ends up being something like 55% love, 45% hate. And when you think about it, that says a lot, because 3 chapters of stumbling, awkward fan service were almost redeemed by 20 minutes of brilliant character payoff. That's power. And that's Mikan Sumiki. Now I'm done. Who's next? Oh, it's a good one. Yay. Mahiru, finally someone who's just normal all around. Yet still, mate, so meh. Like, I don't hate Mahiru in any way, but I sure as hell don't have much passion for her. She's just there. She's the straight, normal girl of the cast. No violent, sadistic, or sexual tendencies, which in these games is a rarity. She's as ordinary as Kazuishi, but without the humour or eccentricity to make her pop. A safe pair of hands, you could say, but thankfully, she does matter, and even if I never personally clicked with her, the game sure did, and it makes sure to tell you plenty of times. Mahiru might not be exciting, but she's written with a ton of respect, and that makes her presence nice. She was kind-hearted, trustworthy, and told us all to get our shit together in a way Chiaki was too nice to say. She even managed to tame Hiyoko, which is frankly a miracle in itself. She acted like a big sister to her, helped her tie her own kimono, which is sweet. And all the world be damned if Hiyoko ever decided to talk back to Mahiru. Are you serious? The girl helped her. She's indebted to her for life now. And her story gets deeper when you factor in the Twilight Syndrome murder case, which I'll delve into the story section properly. But cutting all the blah-de-blah, it basically spells out that Mahiru was innocent. A friend of hers did the stabby stab on her behalf without knowing, and she was horrified to find out, ever consistent with who we know her to be. Mahiru didn't want to be all fancy and have this special talent. All she wanted to do was capture people's smiles. Aww. Now, that said, yes, she was kinda boring. She didn't have that hook that made me want to chat to her or anything. And pretty much all we got in terms of a twist was the game saying, yeah, she's innocent, she shouldn't have died, which we already knew. But to her credit, the game knew that and didn't drag out her arc or pretend there was more coming. You'll see soon enough with what my opinion is with characters that were cut off before their arc was complete. But with Mahiru, they let her run course and bowed her out when it was right, rather than forcing her into scenes that didn't need her. Now here's where Mahiru is at her best, when she fucking dies. Her absence is one of the few that's noticeable in Danganronpa. Hiyoko goes mental, and she builds that lovely little memorial for her. It's so adorable. She really looked up to her, and it's unfortunate to see her lost so soon, even though Mahiru herself wasn't exactly a scene stealer. It's that exact emotional tension that's so impressive. I knew I'd be writing a lukewarm review on her right now if she'd stuck around, but when she's gone, I wanted her back, and that says a lot. Now, if she had stayed longer, I do think the devs would have built her out more. There's clear potential there, but even without that, Mahiru's arc still feels complete. And you know who the fuck else feels complete? Oh boy.
I, Gundam Tanaka!
Hey.
Hold it right there, you.
What are you talking about? Who's this? Name's Zoilov.
here to tell you we're moving on to chapter 4.
Chapter 4? We're not even done chapter 2 yet.
Yeah, but it's getting a bit boring, you know. Let's split it up. Intermission time.
Okay, well, I guess we're talking about the gameplay for a bit. How did Danganronpa 2 flip the script and remix what the first game already excelled in? Well, we're about to find out in this in-depth look into Clash Trials, Panic Talk Action, and Handman's Gambit. Dude, you didn't even get my voice right. This script sucks. Man, that guy, am I right? Anyway, let's flip this one off by discussing Danganronpa's Dark Knight, a devil hiding in plain sight, and yes, I'm talking about daily life. So, yeah, daily life is secretly let evil, and that's mainly down to what it represents as a gameplay element. It's the slice of life section of the game, the calm before the storm, and its only real goal is to get you attached and reel you in slowly with all these comforts until wachow! It's over, someone died again. Does anyone else think that's weird? Regardless of how many friends we brutally lost, there's always a moment of shock with each coming course. It's not cool, and it makes me sad. Why does daily life make me think it's not gonna happen again? Yet it still does. I'm still sat there like, yeah, no duh. I mean, the reason is simple. Daily life gives you all the reasons not to expect a death. It makes the group feel like a community. Bar Nagito, we don't talk about him. They feel like a family. It builds genuine warmth and cohesion between the characters, which makes the eventual reveal of the body even more jarring. The stronger those bonds feel, the harder the snap when they're broken, you know? It's a setup that's as emotional as the killings it sets up, and Danganronpa 2 smashes it miles better than the original. To go a bit further, because apparently there's more, one of the most effective things about daily life in this game in particular is how little it gives away. In the first game, you could sort of get the idea of who was in the kill zone at that moment, and that fact was even more prevalent in retrospect, of course. Characters were getting extra screen time, being paired in the same conversations with unusual people, and things lined up a little too perfectly. In this game, those tells are completely gone. Freaking gaboom, it is what it is. Even after you know who dies, it's difficult to trace any solid breadcrumbs leading up to it. The writing is subtler, the foreshadowing's more buried, get it? And as a result, your ability to predict the next victim is completely shot. The devs clearly learned from the first game, understanding that ambiguity creates tension. By offering fewer clues, they hand more control over to the player's imagination. And I love me a good theory or two. It makes you start theorizing out of paranoia, or like most of us, give up entirely and just try to enjoy the calm while it lasts. Either way, it does what it sets out to do. Main point being, you're never really prepared when the body drops. Insert a cool sound effect, that'd be fun and quirky. Now, as for Deadly Life, it hasn't exactly undergone any dramatic transformation from the first game. It's still the good old investigation phase, where you gather evidence before the trial, but the changes that do exist make a decent impact. Prime example is how less drawn out these investigations are compared to before. Combine that with the longer and more complex Clash Trials, it makes solving each case significantly more challenging, in a good way of course, you know me by now. In Trigger Happy Havoc, investigations often gave you more breathing room. You had more time to poke around, speak to suspects, and often shared moments with key characters who helped push the investigation forward. Whether it was time with bitch Yakuya in the archive or talking to Hina about poison or something, I don't really remember. Those little pockets of one-on-one time added clarity and structure to the investigation process. Plus, Kyoko was always there, doing as the ultimate detective does, lavender hair. I don't know why I have such a vendetta against. She's literally like my favourite character. So yeah, in the present, you're forced to fend for yourself like fucking Tarzan or some shit. You ain't got Kyoko. Which is pretty much it. You don't get to talk to as much people and stuff, but not having Kyoko is torture enough. You're basically on your own, and that isolation makes the process feel more raw, chaotic, and definitely uncertain. It's like the game itself withholds any help from you, so it's personal if anything. Spike Chunsoft just doesn't like us, I guess. Anyway, this shift changes the tone of Deadly Life entirely. It feels personal, less like a narrative-driven mystery, and more like a collaborative scramble where everyone's doing their part, except none of them are doing it with you. Characters like Nagito and Chiaki frequently show up in the trial with insights or discoveries you didn't even know were possible to find. Suddenly, you're not the only brain in the room. I mean, you never were, but like, still. You're still egged on, like, what do you think, Makoto? Like, brother, shut up, sort it out yourself, you condescending twat. So yeah, now you're one of many brains in the room, and you're not even the most effective one. At least Makoto was taking other people's knowledge and pretending it was his, as Hajime, you just kind of gotta coast and bounce from point to point until you get somewhere. Weak Hajime, ultimate gay Nagito kisser, that's what you are. and it's beautiful. Right, Clash Trial. The Clash Trial gets a mad revamp in Danganronpa 2, and the first big shift is tonal. Trials no longer feel like a one-man band where the protagonist is the only voice of reason, because now you've got folks having a go at you. Other characters can interrupt you, challenge your points, and flat out contradict you off the bat. It's a fantastic change of pace because suddenly you're defending your own arguments against people who might have better evidence than you, while also trying to solve the mystery at hand. That tension stays alive even outside of the minigames as you start to wonder when someone's going to flip the script on you. This shift also reinforces how much more collaborative the trials feel in this game. Everyone's doing their own investigations now, and that becomes clear when characters like Nagito or Chiaki come out of nowhere with crucial info you never found. You're no longer at the center of the mystery, just one more student trying to piece it together. Even before the minigames kick off, there's an uneasiness in how Hajime second guesses himself, muttering vague internal monologues right before the next debate or deduction begins. You can predict it, like, oh yeah, there's going to be a non-stop debate in a second. But with these random interruptions, there's no build-up. They just kind of happen and you have to deal with it. That unpredictability reshapes the entire flow of the trial. What used to be safe moments, the back and forth discussion segments, can now become hostile in an instant. Now these rebuttal showdowns are being placed in like landmines as if they're meant to surprise you. It's a brilliant evolution of the format that keeps you constantly alert. But fuck me, my mate's dead by the way, you think I got time for this? Right, let's talk non-stop debates, arguably the face of the Danganronpa trial format. In Goodbye Shit Spare, they get a bit of a fresh coat of paint. You can still shoot down contradictions and capture truth bullets from others, all that jazz, but now you can also agree with valid points. It's a small change, but it matters. Instead of Hajime always playing the "no, that's wrong" role, he's allowed to back someone else up, to be the supporting voice rather than the star of the show. It reinforces the group dynamic, making trials feel less like a solo effort and more like a clash of ideas among equals, something that felt a bit missing in the first game. Oh, and then there's the new and improved Handman's Gambit, and thank God for that. The original was the most tedious of the bunch, but here it's been transformed into a tense, chaotic mess in the best possible way. It toes the line between the easiest and hardest minigame all at once. If you know the word, you can breeze through, but if not, the screen becomes a battlefield of flying letters clashing violently. You've got to keep incompatible ones from colliding, or suffer the wrath of screen shakes and sound effects straight out of a milsim. Genuinely, every wrong collision felt like the game slapped me and said, "Try harder, dumbass." And oh, how I respect that tough love like anything else. Or maybe it's not tough love, it's more like hatred. Either way, thanks for kicking me up the arse with it. Now, I know you're going to scoff at me on this one, but hear me out, tinfoil hat time. What I really love is how it mirrors Hajime's mental state. Stop. Makoto's mind was cluttered, sure, but Hajime's is outright scrambled, and for good reason to be fair. He doesn't know his talent, he's got no sense of identity, he's told that the world ended, he doesn't know which robotic animal to hate and which one to trust, and it doesn't make it any better that he's been plopped on a tropic island. Like, why the absurdity? I'm going through enough here. And unlike Danganronpa 1, where the mystery was hidden behind a mastermind, the game tells you up front there's a whole organization pulling strings. No wonder his mental minigame is a storm of noise and visual overload. Old mate needs to chill out. Anyway, next up, Panic Talk Action, the spiritual successor to Bullet Time Battle. Mechanically, it hasn't changed that much, same rhythm-based point destruction, but with a new UI and updated controls. Where it has evolved is in the final strike. Instead of selecting one of many possible truth bullets, you now have to piece together the correct words in the right order. It's a better design in theory, though I still get tripped up on dumb stuff like meat on the bone versus the meat on bone. Come on, it's the same thing! Still, PTA remains one of the most engaging minigames, especially if you enjoy rhythm games. There's nothing quite like tearing down a classmate's argument with a perfect beat streak. Still an out to rave about though. Now let's talk Logic Dive, easily the weirdest and most unexpected addition. You're on this board, sliding through cyberspace, answering multiple choice questions by swerving between paths. Okay, it's weird, alright, but I like it. It's definitely a jarring but welcome break from the visual novel format. Sure, it's less thematically rich than something like, Rebuttal Showdown, and it kind of feels like a lost mobile game, but I can't deny how satisfying it is, especially after watching Hajime's static PNG body stiffly jog across the island all game, seeing him finally move fluidly in sweet 3D with those damn keyframes. Even if it's set in whatever's the place between heaven and hell, it just feels right. Then there's the closing argument, which remains one of the most artistic parts of every trial. The comic strip finale returns, but now you're selecting from a mix of current correct and red herring panels, as opposed to having to scroll 10 years to get the one you want. That added challenge makes the process smoother and more rewarding. The art's also pretty awesome, so watching it all come together as Hajime walks us through the solution, it's a satisfying conclusion every time. Lastly, my personal favourite, Rebuttal Showdown. This mechanic takes the idea of characters arguing back and forth and turns it into a full-on duel. It's a one-on-one sword fight of words, slicing through objections with your truth blades, as I'm calling them, still waiting on that patent, anticipating that one highlighted weak spot and hoping you choose the right truth to sever it. But it's not just about offense, because that'd be too easy and cool. If you're too aggressive, you risk skipping past key arguments and losing ground. So you're constantly balancing speed, accuracy, and timing. Even better, it lets you see a more fiery, passionate side of your classmates. People who are usually background noise suddenly become your direct opposition, and that shift in dynamic never gets old, man. So there it is, surprise, you're in submission. Danganronpa's gameplay is always somewhat fun to get into, even if it's only for a couple minutes to give some levity to that heavy character analysis chapter. But yeah, thanks for listening. Let's hope that arsehole doesn't gatekeep us from talking about Gundam Tanaka.
I wouldn't dream of it. That lad's hotter than global warming.
Okay, whatever. As long as I can chat about him, I don't mind. Take it away, bear man.
Monokuma.
Oh, shut up, will ya? Ah, thank goodness we're back.
Hello, get on with it then.
Talk about the best
Character in the game, why don't you?
I was getting to it, and hey, you can't just show up here and take over my show like, okay, he's gone. Mate, Gundam is awesome. He's the first character in Danganronpa where I genuinely stopped to look back and thought, you know what, even if he was about as story irrelevant as Akane, as boring as Mahiru, and as dumb as Kazuishi, I'd still love him. And why is that? Because he's just fun, right? The fact that this man doesn't even need a purpose to be awesome is just so cool. Do I need to list the great things he does right? You can probably guess. You know what, I'll do it anyway. It's the theatrics,
the deep-ass, over-the-top voice,
the four dark davas of destruction. Everything about this man is perfect chaos. He's constantly in character, fully committed to the bit, and it's glorious. Where most edgy anime boys feel like they're one I'm not like other guys away from a wedgie, Gundam owns his absurdity, and somehow, despite being built out of every cringe stereotype under the sun, he's endearing as hell, which is apparently his hometown. You don't want him to shut up, you want brother to talk more, yes please, more. You root for this weird little bastard because he's a goofball and a person, and a deeply layered one at that. Now, I won't go too deep into the chapter 4 stuff just yet, that's where his full depth drops like a Nekomaru, but there's still a lot to unpack beforehand. For starters, his entire persona is grade A battle armor, built for 100% protection against dark forces and demons. In translation, the dark forces are genuine connection, and the demons are women. This is a kid with crippling social anxiety who's constructed an entire mythos around himself because the real version of him doesn't feel worthy. This is someone who needs to be seen as powerful, untouchable, and mystic, not because he believes it, but because he doesn't. It's surprisingly backed by facts if you look hard enough. People who live in a persona 24/7 in our world are usually shielding something tender underneath. Musicians, comedians, authors, personas are surprisingly common. Therefore, Gundam treats every social interaction like a final boss fight because he doesn't know how else to interact. He's terrified of being himself because being himself has probably only ever got him ignored, laughed at, or misunderstood. His entire performance is a way of separating his identity from his vulnerabilities. Just an endless game of damage control. If something bad happens, he can deflect it.
That was not me. That was Gundam Tanaka, Dark Lord of Demon Blood,
or whatever. On the flip side, if something good happens, he gets to absorb the praise through the character, in the same way musicians use stage names or writers use pseudonyms. It's a persona with a built-in plausible deniability. Pain hits the mask, not the man, but love can still slip through, which, let's be honest, is a little cool. And sometimes that love does slip through, to the point that it's noticeable from the outside. People do start loving him, flaws and all. Look at how he reacts when Sonya genuinely compliments him. He's got no clue what to do with it, and that's reality if I've ever seen it. It tells us something important. He wants to be seen, but he just doesn't believe he can be unless he's wearing the mask. So yeah, Gundam's awesome, mate. He's also a deeply empathetic mirror for anyone who's ever felt like they've needed to become become someone else just to survive. His theatrics are both a coping mechanism and a shield, and the brilliance of his character is that they never undermine that. He always means well, even if it's hard to decipher, but he's also far from perfect, which makes him more like you and me than we'd care to admit. There's plenty to say about him in a bit, but for now, oh my god, it's the best character ever. Ibuki Miyoda. Yes, she's here and I'm so excited for this bit. I don't even know why I love Ibuki so much, I just do. She's easily top 5 material for me all the way. There are characters who need all these masterfully woven arcs to earn that love, but Ibuki just gets it for being cool and happy. Sometimes that's all you need, man. There's a spectrum of shallow characters in Danganronpa. On one end, you've got someone like Mahiru, who's flat but functional, there to serve a purpose and do it well. On the other end, you've got Akane, who's so underbaked she ends up being more frustrating than anything else. Then there's Ibuki. Same lack of deep narrative focus, and yet I adore her more than characters with triple the backstory. Because Ibuki just radiates joy, doesn't she? In a world drowning in death and paranoia, she's just happiness. Energy's up top. She's like a confetti cannon with infinite ammo. Just keeps going. And thankfully, it's never annoying. And I'll tell you what, if she burst into a room dressed like a hot dog with no explanation, somehow I'd accept it, and that's monumental level praise, bro. I ain't got nobody dressed up as a hot dog unless they got a damn good reason. She's like if a guitar was a person, you know? If the drums are the psycho in the back just hitting shit, the keys are the soft-spoken intellectual, and the bass is the stoner nobody likes, well then the guitar, her guitar is Ibuki. The face of it all, demanding your attention, just feels something, even if it's just the joy of being alive for another 5 minutes. But I could try to go deeper, because what makes Ibuki interesting is what isn't said. We never really get to the core of who she is beneath all that noise, but that might be the point. She seems to believe that identity is fluid, that you can chance who you are on a whim if it brings you closer to joy or helps others find it too. Her entire outlook is built on that idea, hence how bloody mental she is. If something seems fun and won't hurt anyone, do it. And if people are hurting, bring them back up. And if things are heavy, make them light. Because even though she's oblivious and scatterbrained, there are moments where she proves she's incredibly perceptive. That god-awful tribute to Mahiru in the music venue might be tone deaf on the surface, and it's just tone deaf in general, not even on the surface, but it's the Ibuki way to pay respects. Her method of healing is doing random stuff and transforming sadness into noise and celebration. It's her way of processing pain. Added on to that, Ibuki absolutely knows how to read a room. Whenever she senses the vibe is off, she's the first to shift gears and try and lift everyone up. And I'm more than certain that when things get too heavy, she feels it deeply. Even if she doesn't show it in the same way others do. She adapts to the tone in her own unique, chaotic way, but the intent behind it is clear. Make things better. I'm sure she'd do everything she could to cheer people up before it ever got to that breaking point. She strikes me as someone who's deeply kind-hearted and even brutally honest when needed, but she doesn't want to dwell in the heavy stuff. She just wants to fix it with joy. That's her default setting. Lead with happiness, spread it like glitter, hope it sticks. It's a strange balance, but a good one. She knows when to clown around, and she knows when to pull back. Not every problem can be solved by bouncing off the walls, so she seems to get it. Wish she could have been alive longer. What a gem of a character. And I'll be the one to say it, she's not the only gem of a character, because so is Hyoko Saionji. I know, unpopular opinion on that one. Right, so I'm incredibly torn on her. I can confidently say I like her for who she is, her dynamics with the cast, yada yada yada, the whole thing. But there is a tiny, minuscule, barely even relevant asterisk to that. How old is she? At first glance, I was like, sure, what, 8, 9? Maybe Hope's Peak was pulling a get 'em early strategy because, I don't know, her dancing was just that good. But no, canonically she's like 17. And if you buy into that, fucking stay far away from me, mate. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to treat her as if she were a kid, because that's how she acts and how she's drawn and how the game wants you to perceive her, until wabam, apparently it doesn't now for some reason. But looking at it that way, there's a lot more to talk about. Hyoko is an absolute nightmare. Stop throwing verbal hands 24/7. I can't catch him after my friends just died. Now's not the time. But in a twisted way, it's kind of endearing. It's like watching a dog try and bark at an elephant, you know? Just absurd in the best way and pretty funny. It's also hilarious to see how much bite comes from an adorable 8-year-old. Just this tiny little thing and nom nom nom. She's also anti-Mikan, which, what, yes! She says what a lot of us were thinking, but much more vulgar. Just bloody shut up already. Of course, it does go too far. She crosses every line, often, a lot of the time. Okay, every 5 seconds, but there's a purpose behind it for us. That purpose is, simply put it, Morbid curiosity. Like, come on, don't tell me you didn't think the same. I was always thinking, what's she gonna say next? How offensive can she be before someone finally decks her? Turns out you can't batter 8-year-olds, so she just kind of left to do her own thing, which makes it even funnier. She hits so hard with those playground insults so often people just back the hell off, giving her the illusion of dominance. She's like, yeah, I got him, that's right, I did. Meanwhile, the rest of them are all fed up, and then there's me secretly rooting for her in the back. But crikey, Sherlock, would you have guessed there's something broken beneath that venom? Inferiority complex, is that what you say? I'm no doctor, and my slim definition literally applies to over half the cast, but Hiyoko's constant bid to be better and above others sure wants something, validation of some kind. I mean, her free time events have her literally calling Hajime her slave. Ha, fucking right, son. And she's always putting people way above her weight class in a verbal headlock. Freaking 1, 2, 3, Hiyoko Sayonji wins, opponent, Nekomaru. And all these nicknames to go along with it too. So you're telling me we've got the ultimate traditional dancer going against the ultimate Yakuza, ultimate affluent asshole. And what? She wins? Oh, I get it. Tiny boy Kuzuryu, ham hands Togami. There's definitely no denying the louder the insults, the more you can tell there's something going on with her. But before I get fact checked, as I might as well talk about the only thing we know for certain, her and Mahiru's relationship. She's the only person Hiyoko didn't try to dominate, and in some way has some twisted respect for her. Mahiru taught her about the kimono, yeah, we get it, but as soon as she's gone, Hiyoko moves from slinging shit to slinging meteors directly at one person. Of course, it's the person she blames the most for Mahiru's death, and that's for Yuhiko. To see her completely switch up and take her time to ignore the rest of us, saving all of her insults for one guy, you can tell Mahiru meant a lot to her. For all the crocodile tears she sheds, there's no denying some of them are real, definitely in Trial 2, especially considering how she literally locks herself in a room away from everyone after it's over. Sure, she's staying because of the despair disease, but you and I both know she was trying to deal with Mahiru's death in there, and didn't want to risk getting close again in fear of it being taken away from her once more. Ah, so tragic, if only she lived longer. We might have seen her realise Fuyuhiko wasn't the villain she thought he was. It sucks because her arc was on the way there, but I have plenty to say about that, so don't you worry. I'll save my venom for the 3rd chapter, just as Hiyoko saved hers for Fuyuhiko. To sum it up, she died right on the cusp of change, and when things were starting to turn around and become more familial between the cast. Sadly, she died too early. Rest in peace, mate. Oh my.
Nekomaru need I?
My goodness, this guy is everything and more. Nekomaru is one of the most straight up weird Danganronpa characters. The guy constantly needs a shit, to the point it's basically his catchphrase, and honestly I respect the commitment, but what makes him really lovable is the way he hypes everyone up and sees us as more than we think we are. He genuinely believes Hajime could make it in rugby if he tried, and even offers to train him. Hajime, the skiddy twat. He's a total family man, obsessed with making the people around him the best version of themselves. And what makes it so endearing is that while he puts everyone else first, he doesn't forget about himself either. Unlike the ultimate imposter, Nekomaru actually lives by his own philosophy. He trains hard, clearly takes care of his body, and it shows. Akane, the ultimate gymnast, can't even beat him in a 1v1, and he's actively holding back to avoid hurting her. Alright, chill out on the flex, brother. That's what makes him even more magnetic to be around, because he works on his own flaws with real discipline, fucking damn right, especially in someone you'd expect to be a loud, hot-headed meathead. Pleasant surprise. Even further, he only really loses it when his friends are murdered or when he really needs the toilet, and honestly, both are understandable. One more than the other, obviously. The shit is more justified. And better yet, he sacrifices himself for Akane. Like, what a move. He's willing to literally die to protect someone he cares about. Then he comes back as Mechamaru, and you'd think he'd be different, but no, he's still himself. Still wholesome and still encouraging, still all about the team. He doesn't flaunt his new robot powers. The most dramatic thing he shows off is the soda dispenser in his eyes. But even that so he can just be like, hey, you're thirsty? I got you. He can't even drink the soda himself. It's literally just for his mates. The man runs on oil. That's the kind of guy he is. Someone who can't even enjoy his own cool features, but still wants them to be useful to others. The ideal team manager, one that puts his pride aside for the well-being of the group. And you know it's never for show. It's just who he is. He does it for the love of the game and the love of the people around him. That's really all I need to say about him. He's sweet, he's perfect, and his role in the story is solid, because no one ever forgets Nekomaru, do they? He dies and people say, I miss Nekomaru. He dies again as Mechamaru, and Kazuishi literally makes a talking keychain in his honor. His selfless attitude never goes unacknowledged. Even after 2 deaths, one as a man and one as a robot, his presence still lingers in the group. Let me ask you this. Who else dies twice and is still not over and done with? That kind of legacy's rare, viewers. Something of him is always left behind, and we never forget how awesome he was. A-tier character, no question, moving on. Peko Yama. That's what I'm saying. Now, Peko's tough to talk about. There's plenty to say, but I have to judge her for who she is and what she did. Same way I handled Mikan. Gotta keep it fair. And quite honestly, I liked Peko, right? She was calm and reserved without feeling cold. I never felt uneasy around her, nor did I hate her. I even chose to spend free time with her. Bloody big commitment, that is. And she talked about loving soft, cuddly animals and how they always ran away when she approached them. Aww. So yeah, her personality on the surface is squeaky clean. She's the mayor of stoicism, probably, and she's pretty alright. But beneath all that, yeah, it's getting serious. There's a human in there. She might call herself a tool, but the reality is much more complicated. Because, even before we learn who she really is, she comes off as a regular person. Of course, by the end of chapter 2, we find out she's not just a regular girl, she's Fuyuhiko's personal hitwoman, working for the Yakuza for the love of all things holy, which is where it gets a bit complicated. Peko doesn't really engage with the rest of the group, as she's literally indifferent. She's not here to bond because she has a regimented, clear-cut purpose. Everyone else might as well be streetlights on a long road trip. Some are red, some are green, and some are mild inconveniences, I mean orange. And to make it clear, you mess with Fuyuhiko, you're a red light buddy. She'll stop and you will not like it. So technically it's nothing personal because Peko only sees herself through the lens she was given, one where her role is to protect and kill people sometimes. Her moral compass is rigged to someone else's north, which is why she's such a tough character to discuss. I mean, Fuyuhiko wants to stand on his own. He doesn't need a human shield. Well, he doesn't want one. He definitely needs one. Look at him, 4'2" ass. So he's pushing Peko away in one direction, but he also needs her a little bit. And then Peko's pushing in the opposite direction because it'd kind of be nice to be your own person instead of being tethered to a loudmouthy whole life. But also Fuyuhiko is so cute. I need to protect him, blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, her devotion wins out. Of course, we know what happens, but once again, it's the questions it raises. Was she protecting him out of instincts or just following her training? Was it something more? Did she do it not just to shield his body, but to spare his future? To keep him from the emotional, moral, even legal consequences of killing someone? I mean, can you teach someone to care? Of course you can, but to love? Or does it only count when it comes from free will? I don't have the answers, and I don't think the game fully does either. But that ambiguity, those uncomfortable questions, are what make me appreciate Peko's character so much. I hate the act she committed, right? I hate the cover-up. But I understand why she did it, and it hurts to understand it. But yeah, writing-wise, Peko's pretty perfect. I've got a whole monologue in me about that trial, but for now, we're gonna move on to... Damn it. Teruteru Hanamura, you're gonna be flabbergasted when you hear the insight I managed to scrape off his fried corpse. And oh, I know I'm gonna make some people mad with this one. But Teruteru was funny, alright? I don't know what else to tell you. He's a menace, a greaseball, and says some of the most repugnant shit in the whole series, and yet... I kinda love to hate him. He's just so ridiculous it just loops back round to being entertaining. And look, I'm not about to sit here and defend the guy's actions. If he'd been executed for just being a perv, I wouldn't have protested. But somehow that's not what got him killed. What did? That is actually one of the best and most morally confusing motives in the entire series. But we'll get to that, so shut up, stop making me think. I'll tell you. Maybe what made me like him, even though he's just haha sex funny, is probably how, unlike Mikan and Akane, he was framed as a bad person. Nobody's denying, not even the characters, that Teruteru was out of order. And that's what gives us sort of unconscious permission to like his character. At the end of the day, you're viewing him through how the story views him. If the story glorifies an evil character, and you like that character, you're, by extension, glorifying an evil character. But since Teruteru is looked down upon in the game, liking him means you like the evil, not the act. Similar to Hyoko, Teruteru's funny because of that shock value. He says what you're not supposed to say, does what you're not supposed to do, and still manages to make you laugh, even if it's followed by an immediate ugh. And of course, there's some juicy hints in there that allude to something deeper that I like. There's a weird dissonance in the way he idolizes his mum, a strong, hard-working woman he clearly loves deeply. And then he turns around and objectifies every girl in a 2-mile radius like anyone with over 50 hours on COD. It's like he's never actually spent time around girls his age. Maybe you grew up buried in cookbooks and romance media, and this caricature of sexuality is all he's absorbed. I always thought his love language was food because that's all he's ever known that could bring people to him in a positive way. So that's why he puts his all into the dishes he makes for us. Now, of course, mandatory Kazuishi comparison, he says weird stuff, but he doesn't know any better, but Teruteru does. He sees how other boys interact, and he knows he's being off, though he does it anyway, which tells me he's more insecure than he is clueless, using food and flirtation as armor to cover up the fact he doesn't know how to actually talk to people, especially women. That doesn't excuse anything, obviously, but it does explain it, at least partly. And I do wonder, if he'd been allowed to stick around longer, Could he have changed? Could he have grown into someone better with the right influence? He clearly had a moral compass, he just followed it off a cliff. His final act was a selfless one, and you can tell it came from a place of genuine care, even if he never learned how to express that properly. Who cares? Fucking Sonya, never mind, go on. Sonya is well cool. She's got this kind-hearted, calming aura around her, and such clear, pure intentions you know she's just incapable of murder. Don't ask me how, I just knew, okay? And I'm glad I was right. From the get-go, there's a sense of stability when she's around. Not only is she non-threatening, she's stabilizing. And what's even more interesting is how she commands respect from everyone, despite not being intimidating in the slightest. When Sonya says stop, people actually stop, like, oh shit, it's Sonya. What makes that respect so fascinating is that it's not because she's a princess, it's not like a hierarchy thing, it's because Sonya represents something, this image of purity and nobility that none of the others really have. She's not rugged like Akane, she's not annoying like, well, you know, she's composed and elegant. Everything about her upbringing has been orderly and dignified. She's respected for the purity she represents. But underneath it, of course, there's something else. Sonya doesn't always pick up on social cues. For someone so smart, she's also wildly gullible, especially around people like Teru, whose weird little advances she sometimes just doesn't clock. It shows that, despite her intelligence, she's still learning how to navigate people. Real people, not the kind who bow down and suck up to her because what, she's a princess? Easy, I could do that. And her arc, to me, is about the slow erosion of that royal sheen. She becomes more rugged and starts using slang for some reason, and bar from how hilarious it is, it reflects how Sonya is adjusting. She's being forced to adapt, to become an individual, not just a title or a symbol. As the killing game unfolds, that sanitized, princess-like image starts to dissolve. She's forced to step up and see that things are unfiltered, uncensored, without any real guards to hide the horror. It's a subtle transformation, but it's one of my favourite background arcs, I suppose. Oh, and then there's Gundam. Yeah, their dynamic's a bit fascinating. Sonya treats everyone with equal respect, sure, but Gundam is different. She sees herself in him. Both of them are these heightened, larger-than-life personas that walk a fine line between genuine and performative. And Sonya, who's probably used to being seen as fake by people who don't understand her, chooses to offer Gundam something he's probably never had. Honest, affectionate praise, as a way of reflecting what she wishes would happen to her. That moment alone tells you everything you need to know about who Sonya is at her core. She's not dumb, just inexperienced. When the humour leans into her misunderstandings or mispronunciations, it's not cheap, it's never exploitative, and she always draws a line when things get uncomfortable. She doesn't put up with sexualization, and she doesn't play into it, and she sure as hell isn't oblivious to it. Well, maybe not with Teru, but as she gets more aware, it's the first thing she's quick to shut down. So yeah, Sonya's brilliant, a character that balances humour, elegance and growth. She's what Akane wants to be, a likeable, oblivious girl archetype who's actually treated with care and respect by the writing. Thank goodness, about bloody time. Now, we're obviously missing someone. Oh, no, I said I'd speak about Hajime later, didn't I? Alright then, nobody else at all? Good. Next chapter is all about the story. No plot recaps because fuck them, innit? We're talking an in-depth look at each trial, and the writing in particular, maybe tug a few heartstrings, and really delve into the lore, especially character relationships. Okay, you get it, I'm just excited, right? Get on with it then, Monokuma. Fucking do your job, mate. Wow, where do we start with this one, eh? Probably at the beginning, that'd be ideal. Ah, a nice slow pan of Hope's Peak and all that, how lovely. Now we're in a classroom. There's Byakuya. Oh, never mind, we're in a desert island now. Danganronpa never fails to excel at one thing in particular. Now it excels at many things, but this one is particularly potent. Fucking tonal whiplash. It knows that all this spinning around and crazy madness can put players in a vulnerable position. It does it in Trial 1 of the first game, where we're forced to grieve, solve the mystery, and learn the mechanics all at once. Here it's, where are we? How did this happen? What's Hajime's talent? Why is Byakuya here? Why is he so fat? So many questions to be asked right off the bat, and straight from Usami zapping us to another dimension, then Monokuma immediately popping in out of nowhere. There's a lot to think about, and that allows Danganronpa 2 to plant the seeds it needs to among the chaos, and disappear into the shadows before we even notice they're there. So I was immediately impressed looking back on that in particular, and of course, even more flabbergasted when we got to the first trial. Byakuya's death was a tragic one, of course. This time, there was no Sayaka to get close to and be sad over, so we either had to kill off an already beloved character, or shove in someone random, and in retrospect, that makes perfect sense. Why wouldn't they choose Byakuya? But it still sucks to see someone, even if we eventually reveal it wasn't truly him, who was trying their best to protect everyone, perish. But of course, this is Danganronpa 2, you hear that? Danganronpa 2, not 1, 2. Therefore, the writing is leagues ahead of what it once was, and they want us to know that as soon as. The best way to do that is include a plot twist that played our expectations like a fiddle. And it all starts with the first victim, the one who flipped the tone of the game in an instant, and reminded us just how cruel this world could be. Byakuya's death isn't telegraphed in the usual way. Sure, he gets a bit more screen time than most, and that's often the kiss of death in Danganronpa, but with all the precautions he took and all the effort he made to secure the area and protect everyone, it just didn't feel possible. For the first time in the series, I actually felt safe. We were all gathered in one room under strict rules, with every weapon accounted for. I genuinely believe this would be a brief slice-of-life breather, maybe a few suspicious moments and a touch of foreshadowing, but certainly no bloodshed. Not here, not now. But someone still died, and not just anyone, Byakuya. He wasn't killed off-screen through any subtle means, he was stabbed to death during a blackout, in the very room where everyone stood, and in a flash, that cute little illusion of safety was shattered. For all his arrogance, meticulous planning and intensity, he still died. At the time, I didn't even think I liked his portrayal all that much. This man didn't feel like Byakuya at all, mate, but I adored him as a character, and seeing him go like that snapped me back into Danganronpa's rhythm in the worst and best way possible. That jarring feeling of sudden irreversible loss, the realization that no one is safe, not even legacy characters, and more importantly, that this game wasn't going to pull its punches. Everything about the setup worked. You had the locked case of weapons and the power outage, and only one real place to hide a weapon with only one real person who could pull it off. It all forced the killer to get creative, which in turn forced us, the players, to play closer attention. It was the perfect kind of Danganronpa crime, one that used its constraints as a creative springboard. It was in that moment I knew, without a doubt, that this sequel wasn't just living up to the original, it might actually surpass it. What makes Byakuya's death truly tragic isn't just the loss of a familiar fat face, it's also who he became in this game. As the de facto leader, he was stern, controlling, and surprisingly nurturing. Whether he was the Byakuya we remembered or not, the man we met in this game cared. He tried to protect us even though he didn't even know us. He didn't have to. Nowhere in the Neo World program manual did it say you had to shield a girl who stomps on ants, a guy suffering with the constant need to take a shit, a psychopath, an egomaniac, and too many pervs from death. Yet this man did. That instinct gave his actions weight. And meaning. And even if I questioned his characterization at first, when he died, I felt it. His absence left a void through everything, the group dynamic and the sense of leadership, but most importantly, because who cares about sentient PNGs? My heart. There was a void in that too. I mean, there was probably one there anyway, but it got wider. Of course, there's the trial itself, which, come on, masterful from top to bottom. The way it shifts suspicion and gives us a fully believable narrative where Nagito's the killer had me completely solved, his erratic phrasing and unsettling presence, and that absolutely unhinged outburst about hope painted him as the obvious culprit. For a second, I thought Danganronpa 2 was opening with the wildest twist imaginable. The atmosphere was suffocating, and the psychological whiplash worked. That trial played me like a fiddle. But then there's the real twist, innit? Teru, the reveal that he was the one who tried to kill Nagito and accidentally murdered Byakuya instead. Bloody ab me lad. Everything that defines a brilliant Danganronpa trial is right here. The sharp misdirection, emotional weight, clever structure, and a twist that hits you right in the gut. I was already impressed by the murder and investigation, but it was this reveal that confirmed the game wasn't just competing with its predecessor, which was already mad enough. It was out for blood. And then there's Nagito spiraling into a hopeful lunatic before our eyes. I can't believe how fast it went from the most comfort I've ever felt in one of these games to the most https:/steamcommunity.com/ that's my Steam link. Why did I put the Steam link in the script? I can't believe how fast it went from the most comfort I've ever felt, blah blah blah, to the most terrified in the span of like 20 minutes. But Teru had a motive, and somehow it's even more mind-bending. Thing doing, I don't know. And as much as I disliked Fat Kid number 5 over here, his reasoning somehow had nothing to do with selfishness. He tried to kill Nagito, genuinely. Hear this, I know you already know, but it still flabbergasts me. to protect the group. He saw someone dangerous and unstable and took it upon himself to prevent a future murder. To him, it was either Nagito dies or he does. He didn't want anyone else getting dragged into this and dying in the process. Horribly ironic now, innit? I mean, he technically succeeded, just not in the way he intended. And what hits me the hardest, right, is how completely unprepared he was for the aftermath. The moment after the murder was done, Teru crumbled, like killing changes a person, and I can only imagine the shockwave of horror that went through him when he just sat there like, damn, I just killed someone. And so he immediately tries to cover it up because he was scared, genuinely terrified, knowing that he just gave his entire life up in that fleeting of a moment. I'm sure his mind immediately went to his mum and how he'd never have a chance of seeing her again, and thus he had to give it a shot. It was now or never to make himself look innocent, so he did. So here he was, a broken man, spiraling from guilt and clinging to one final desperate wish, to return home to someone who might not survive without him. Suddenly, all the awful things he said and did, while still inexcusable, begin to take shape in a new light. The man is deeply broken and has no clue how to interact with people. He's curated all this vulgarity and a whole fake accent as performative confidence, but of course, he's just desperate to connect like the rest of us. He wants to be loved and he wants friends, but he doesn't know how to reach out, and his only way of doing so is being that. He did one amazing thing to try and unleash himself from all his wrongdoing, and though it doesn't work like that, no single sacrifice can atone for all the shit he's done, it definitely frames the poor boy differently. I don't excuse him in any way, but I sure as hell feel for him. Oh, what a trial that was. Well, I was planning on heading to the beach this evening. Let's go see Mahiru's dead. Oh no, no, no. Her death comes at what I'd call the most peaceful moment in the game overall. There's still some grief going on here and there from, you know, people dying, but it's okay kinda. There's a weird semblance of calmness setting in, and when Monokuma's all, play video game! Twilight Syndrome murder case! Everyone, almost in unison, is just like, meh, I ain't doing that. We don't want any more death, just let us live. Of course, most of us end up playing the game anyway through gritted teeth, but that initial hesitation says enough about what mood we're in. We're barely even curious, just scared, or in Fuyuhiko's case, needing to stay one step ahead. That's a pretty interesting thing to note about this chapter. There's no sense of impending doom. Nagito's tied up, so there's no chance he's going anywhere. And other than him, no one else seems like they want to kill. All we're getting up to is exploring the second island and doing a side quest with Kazuishi. Hajime's more interested in getting a peek than he is suspecting foul play. It's definitely creepy, no doubt about that. But is it deadly? Not yet. The atmosphere is too low-key and oddly comforting. All we're left to do is just live life however we can, which is why Mahiru popping her clogs out of nowhere, literally being the most normal, down-to-earth ass character imaginable, makes such a huge impact. I mean, how else to disrupt everyone else trying to thrive in the most normal ways we can by taking out the most normal character here? I guess it wasn't a question, but I have a few ideas. Anyway, shut up. What makes this second case so gripping is how utterly confusing it is at first. The evidence is like an emo's bedroom, just shit everywhere. Like there's a gummy that kinda maybe might be Hyoko's, and a window that's open somehow, but it's also like 7 feet above the floor, there's no way you're escaping out of that. Nothing points to anyone, yet nothing rules anyone out either. In fact, it takes a good chunk of the actual class trial before we start forming solid solutions. The first half is almost entirely devoted to that goddamn game, which at the time felt like a weird thing to talk about right now, given the dead body we just found, but it makes perfect sense in hindsight. Chiaki, the ultimate gamer of course, is guiding the conversation. She's probably the only one who understands the connection between the game and the murder, so I'm counting on her media literacy to decode what's going on, while Hajime, and us by extension, are left playing catch up like trained dogs. It's yet another moment that reinforces how truly powerless we are, and how clever the writing is at letting that helplessness creep in slowly. Also for sidelining Hajime, because get out of here bro, you're not Makoto. When it's finally revealed that Fuyuhiko met with Mahiru before she died, everything suddenly clicks into place, and my fear we've been spending way too much time on this video game has been quelled. Unfortunately, that's just the beginning of the emotional impact, because Chapter 2's pulling no punches, even more than the first time round. Yeah, Chapter 2 of this game is, fuck, yeah, that's it, just fuck. It's the only case in the entire game that actually made me cry, damn it. Oh, it was just awful, mate. So much to think about and so little time before we had to move on to the execution. The motive and the relationship between Fuyuhiko and Peko, really heavy to think about. And it all starts with the events of Twilight Syndrome, the revelation that Fuyuhiko's younger sister was killed by Mahiru's friend. That trauma and that rage builds up until it explodes, and as if Fuyuhiko wasn't already enough of a hothead by this point. And that split-second decision to pick up the bat and lash out is the moment that forever rewrites Fuyuhiko's life. From that single act of retaliation, a chain reaction begins, one that leads to Mahiru's death, Peko's trial, and a complete emotional collapse for everyone involved. Then, Pekoyama, the dutiful tool, line. It sucks to say it, but Peko is arguably the worst figure in this entire case, and I don't mean that with hatred, but you gotta admit, things don't look the best on her end. At the end of the day, she swung that weapon, lied to our faces with that whole sparkling justice thing, which was ridiculous, while putting on the charade that she had no clue what had happened until Fuyuhiko was getting too much of the smoke. I suppose she'd have to give in anyway for her 4'2" Prince Charming over here, but after how much she leads us on and betrays us anyway, it's not the best feeling. Even now, it hurts to admit how much I resent her, because none of it's her fault, it's how she was nurtured. Still, if nurture could be blamed for every crime it was involved in, all the serial killers would be running free, so we must hold Peko accountable for what she did. Like Teru, Peko's motive came from a place of humanity, even if it's buried under 1,000 layers of I am Letul. Conditioned from birth to be nothing more than a weapon, she somehow broke free of that conditioning, even if only for a moment, and that raises a painful question. Is it sustainable to strip someone of their humanity from the moment they're born and expect them not to break? Surely, if you've never been introduced to the idea of individualism, you've been taught to suppress love and reject emotional vulnerability, how could something so deeply oppressed ever find a way out? Yet still, she killed. She ended the life of someone just as innocent as she was. Peko may be tragic, but the worst part is the realization that it could have been avoided if only she had disarmed her master instead of finishing the job. I understand her reasoning, and I think her motive makes perfect sense from her perspective, but I still hate that she took a life regardless. What frustrates me even more is how she tried to cover it up, misleading us, sending us down a trail of misdirection, while sitting there fully prepared to take the fall. She had to place the blame on herself eventually, but the fact she dragged us through a brutal game of cat and mouse only to reveal herself anyway feels manipulative. I get that she was admitting defeat and wanted us to vote for her, I understand her intent, but making us reconstruct the murder of an innocent person just so she could theatrically reveal her identity, I can't forgive that. And yet, I understand it, right? She wanted to protect Fuyuhiko, to keep his hands clean because she loved him. He understood that. That's why he did the responsible thing and told her to stop pretending. That moment was powerful. It just showed how human they were beneath all the violence and posturing. None of them asked for any of this, and that's when that thought passed by my mind. They're just kids. You forget that in Danganronpa because of how outrageous everything is, but that's all they are, teenagers born into impossible circumstances. Nobody in Danganronpa finds their talent naturally. It's either imposed on them from birth or developed out of necessity. That's what Fuyuhiko and Peko taught me, how unnatural it is for children to be this hardened, to master swordsmanship not for sport, but for death, actually planning to use that to protect those you care about, and in Fuyuhiko's case, to lead people at an age where most people are figuring out who they are. They shouldn't need to do this. Even further, Fuyuhiko's breakdown hit me like a truck. It was soul-crushing, because you realise that for all his bravado and cruelty, he never wanted any of this. He didn't want to lose his sister, he didn't want to hurt Mahiru, he didn't want Peko to die for him. He just wanted to find happiness, but he was too far gone to know how to ask for it. See the pattern? Peko, meanwhile, believed she was fulfilling her role, that if she died as a tool, she was giving him her best, her loyalty, her final act of service. She thought she was helping. And that's what makes me hate this case in the best possible way, because it's not a clean-cut villain story. Peko and Fuyuhiko were kids, just kids, raised in an environment that twisted their sense of love, loyalty, and justice. They were handed power without the tools to wield it properly. It doesn't excuse murder, it never does, but it makes sense. Fuyuhiko trying to stop the execution, physically putting himself in harm's way for the first time in series history. That moment shattered me. That's how deep this rabbit hole goes, eh? Wow, they must really care for each other. And for the record, because this shit needs to be said, I've always seen Fuyuhiko and Pekko's bond as familial, not romantic. They've been together since birth. Pekko's role was always to protect him, not because of love in a romantic sense, but because that's what she was built to do. That kind of upbringing doesn't create infatuation, it breeds loyalty, duty, or in this case, something closer to unconditional platonic love. The kind a mother might have for her son, a brother for his sister. That's what their bond has always read to me. The game never spells it out, but I feel like they've loved each other for a long time, just never said it aloud. When everything falls apart in the trial, when their pain comes pouring out, they're flustered and a bit embarrassed. I mean, they don't know how to be emotionally honest, so they blush and go a bit mental. It's all new ground to them, and that subtlety is so important because it tracks parallels across the whole case. Fuyuhiko's younger sister dies, and so he lashes out, but in doing so, he loses someone else, his figurative sister in Pekko. That cycle of loss continues, and that's the moment he breaks the cycle. Her death is the wake-up call, and from that point forward, he leads differently in a more authentic way. It's one of the most human arcs in the game, a boy who learns not because someone told him to, but because his own actions destroyed the people he loved most. And I think seeing Pekko as the older sister and Natsumi as the younger one, having them both lost by his inability to protect and lead with kindness, it really comes full circle. Why was Natsumi such a bully? Well, her brother was and it got her killed. Why did Pekko get executed? Trying to protect Fuyuhiko's bully attitude from getting him killed. It just makes so much sense. So yeah, I hated them both at first, I hated what they did, but as the dust settled and their pain was laid bare, I wanted nothing more than peace for Pekko and some kind of redemption, however fragile, for Fuyuhiko. And, just play it. Maybe, just maybe, everybody, this was the first step toward that. Anyway, chapter 3 time. This one is a lot. It's a lot. If chapter 2 was built on stillness and tragedy, then chapter 3 kicks off in pure confusion. For the first time in the game, the future genuinely felt unclear. Like, what? All we're left with as leads is the slow, creeping unease of the despair disease that even Monokuma can't fully explain, and that's how you know shit's deep. And arguably, that vagueness makes it worse. 3 of our friends are suddenly sick, isolated in a hospital, and acting even more unpredictable than usual. I mean, you couldn't have had it any worse, could you? Ibuki, the crackhead, Nagito, the psychopath ready to kill even more now, and Akane, the please don't hurt me. Oh, never mind, she's crying. But thankfully, the writing gods have blessed us with perfection, because all this chaos becomes the perfect space for Fuyuhiko's redemption arc to unfold. With the group disoriented and Hajime stepping into a leadership-adjacent role, Fuyuhiko joins him, voluntarily. Thank goodness he's finally pulling his weight around here. He offers to stay at the hospital, helping Mikan if she needs anything, keeping watch over the infected, and quietly supporting Hajime. It's a role he never would have played before Chapter 2, or even in Chapter 2, but now he's trying, and that effort is exactly what he needed to earn back the player's trust. And it's nothing fancy, just Fuyuhiko being there, being helpful, and letting his actions do the talking. And he also harakiris himself, so there's that. That's what makes this chapter so effective despite the chaos. It balances fear and character growth in the same breath. With Nagito quarantined and Ibuki off a rhythm, to say the least, it says gullible on the ceiling by the way, there's a quietness here that lets smaller character moments breathe. The tension of the setting never fully fades, but it softens in key moments, and Fuyuhiko's growth is one of them. Good stuff. I like him using the slice of life as a tension builder while also giving us some sweet, succulent character moments. On the other hand, Mikan, while not getting much personal development in the moment, is being gently nudged into focus. Her screen time increases, she becomes more central to the group's routine. People rely on her, and while Danganronpa has trained us to fear the more screen time equals culprit thing, it makes perfect sense in context, doesn't it? She's the nurse, people are sick. No shit. And then the worst happens. Ibuki's death is the moment that every vague worry we had about the despair disease comes crashing into reality. That fear, the dread we couldn't quite put into words, suddenly has a body. And not just any body, but Ibuki. Someone whose laughter's more infectious than this dumb disease. And who better else to fuck off? It's the exact kind of death that feels like a punch to the gut because it actually just hurts. And then, as if that wasn't enough, we discover Hiyoko dead too. The double murder is jarring not just for what it is, but for how it unfolds. Hiyoko's body appearing seemingly after Ibuki's throws the entire group into disarray. Where Ibuki's death felt tragic, Hiyoko's felt wrong, out of place. Like, why? Then all the questions start showing up, and I'm overstimulated. Let's take this somewhere else. And thanks to all this riffraff, the game is allowed to pull some fancy old strings beneath our feet, and instead of pointing our suspicion towards the killer, just slowly, it straight up says nah, and sends us in the wrong directions. Chapter 3 exploits what I'm dubbing role-based trust, and you'll see what I mean in a min. Mikan is the nurse. And she's a lot of things. Caring, kind, trying her best, annoying, stressed, overworked, but most of all, she's essential. Hence why she's so present in this chapter. Hence why we interpret this as plot importance, not danger. It's psychological sleight of hand. I just learned that word, wasn't it sick? The more helpful someone is, the less threatening they seem, until wha-bam, wa-chow. And so, her being revealed as the killer feels violating of our own sense of logic. But the manipulation doesn't stop there. Danganronpa 2 does something even more insidious in Chapter 3. It lets comfort be the bait. Oh yeah, I just love this slow pacing chilling in the hospital with a bunch of dying people. How lovely. So cozy. They're all designed to make us believe the worst might be over. Even the despair disease is handled in a way that feels manageable, contained. We think we're in control, then Ibuki dies, then Hiyoko, it's over. And we realize the comfort was never real, it was just the mask this chapter wore before it bared its teeth. Now, in terms of structure, Chapter 3 is the most anti-mystery chapter in the game, because there's no clear weapon, and that motive doesn't emerge until later on. Then the deaths seem disconnected, even random. It plays out like I'm being studied in a psych ward, and would you believe that's the point? No, you wouldn't. It sounds crazy. It's the vibe that gets you, not the mechanics. By the time we're in the trial, we're just recovering from emotional whiplash. What do you mean, mystery? Your mate's dead. What are you chatting, pal? Like, why did the game make us need Mikan so much? Damn it, this thing plays too many tricks. Well, take this, more insight into the case. Of course it is, this is a video essay. You really think I had a better idea than Chapter 3's trial? What a slow, suffocating spiral. One tat, I misspelt the word that, okay. One that starts with a confused shrug and ends in Compared to earlier trials, this one begins with far fewer facts, like weapon? For starters. Why le murder, if you're really looking deep into it? All we know is that Ibuki is dead by hanging, Hiyoko somehow dead in the same building. Like, come on, this is ridiculous now. The evidence might as well be a more Pegasus video. Now we get the usual lull as the Clash trial takes its shape, but that's well boring. So how about we get to the fake suicide twist trademark, which I came up with. And I know it's basically just what happened with a trademark on the end, but let me have this. The idea that Ibuki was manipulated into taking her own life is as disturbing as it is genius, and in good old Danganronpa fashion, it weaponizes the player's own assumptions. Of course, we saw footage of her tying the noose, getting closer to it, rearing up ready, then no one expected this one coming. The footage was faked, staged by someone who knew exactly how we'd interpret it. It's a brilliant move because it plays off the implicit trust we place in evidence, only to reveal that we were being manipulated the entire time, just like Ibuki. Then Hiyoko's murder flips the energy again. Unlike Ibuki, Hiyoko's body was found later at the same location, meaning it wasn't a planned double murder, it was a cover-up, a sloppy last-minute reaction to someone who got in the way. The killer panicked and was like, damn, guess I gotta kill that person in the exact way it said in the film I watched earlier today. Oops. Now that contradiction is what starts unraveling the whole thing. The moment we start linking the two deaths together, the threads begin to fray. The key detail, the scrap a piece of shit wallpaper, becomes becomes the turning point, this wondrous item of importance leading to the revelation that someone disguised themselves as Ibuki using her hospital gown. The pieces fall together slowly, and Danganronpa gives you just enough time to suspect Mikan before you desperately convince yourself it can't be her. But it is. And the moment Mikan's name gets spoken out, everything stops. Her face changes, her tone changes, her presence in the room shatters, and something deeply wrong crawls out. Mikan's reveal is perfect. Mikan's reveal is utterly perfect. She's the last person you'd expect to secretly be evil, but once it clicks, it makes sense, I can't lie. Which makes it oddly even scarier. She's been mistreated by the group for eons! Eons, I say! Bullied over and over again. It must get pretty lonely being her, right? You begin to realize the game built her into a perfect storm of misplaced pity and carefully disguised presence. As I said before, the game psychologically needed us to trust her, and it worked. Because there's a bloody reason they gave her, of all people, the remembering disease. Her breakdown feels like reality reasserting itself, like someone who's suddenly forced to remember their entire life in the span of a second. And that's what happened to Mikan, only days before we even noticed. I mean, tragically it makes sense, no doubt. Of course, any person would crack under that kind of pressure, and so Mikan becomes not herself, but not herself. She becomes both. She swings between quiet, sadistic confidence and the old apologetic panic in real time. She'll mock someone's death one second, then collapse into apologies the next. The two halves of her personality, ultimate despair and Mikan, are actively learning how to balance each other out before our very eyes. And that's what's so deeply disturbing, because this isn't like Peko, right? Peko's actions, while twisted, were still driven by passion. Her real self was screaming from inside the mask, but Mikan didn't make a choice. She didn't grow from her despair. She was actively dragged into it. All she got was clarity, and what she saw broke her again. One of the most haunting moments of this trial for me is when her usual I'm sorry's mutate into play the clip. It's no longer the conditioned apology of someone who feels lesser. It's the repressed anger of someone who was told they were lesser and finally snapped. That rage isn't coming from malice by any means, and that makes her scarier than anyone else, really. She feels real and feels probable. Aside from all this sci-fi nonsense, if all this shit were real and someone was forced to remember themselves as a psychopath, Mikan's reaction, her switching back and forth between what she used to know and what she knows now, makes total sense. The scary bit about it is how real it feels, because anyone witnessing that scene knows they'd react the same way, and knowing that you could become a killer if this was burdened upon you, that's fear. Now, her motive definitely doesn't excuse her, but it contextualizes her. All she wanted to do was matter, or at least a little bit, and that need was twisted by Junko into something cruel. Mikan didn't become a monster because she wanted to hurt people, she did so because hurting people was the only time she was seen by Junko, and we, Hajime, the group, the player, made her feel that way the moment we looked at her with disgust. Even without our memories, we still resented her, so she went right back to where despair told her she belonged as soon as it popped back in front of her. But for everything this chapter does right, I can't ignore one major flaw. Hiyoko didn't get the justice she deserved. From the moment her body is discovered, it feels like her death was treated as a plot device rather than an actual happening. The trial is so focused on how the surveillance footage was faked, on the mystery of the hanging and the misdirection surrounding Mikan, that Hiyoko is barely acknowledged. Her death isn't deeply investigated, barely theorized about, and when the killer is revealed, the final argument skips right over her entirely. And that hurts, because Hiyoko, for all her flaws, wasn't a nothing character. She had an arc forming. She hated Fuyuhiko with everything she had, and yet we were beginning to see the cracks in that hatred. She was starting to process grief, to try, in her own awful, abrasive way. A scene between her and Sonia hinted at this. Sonia helping her with a kimono, just giving her some advice on where to, tie it. Hiyoko showing vulnerability for the first time. Normally in Danganronpa, those soft CGs accuse visual bookmarks for a future emotional payoff, but here, that moment is never referenced again, it just disappears like she did. Worse still, even after the trial ends, the group mourns Ibuki, and only Ibuki. She gets a send-off. Hiyoko is barely named, just grouped in as the other one who died. Not even a mention of her spite, or the tragedy of how that spite never had a chance to soften. And sure, she wasn't well liked, but that's the exact reason her death should have hit harder. We didn't need to glorify her, but we did need to feel something. Instead, the silence is deafening. Compare that to how the game treats its other victims. Byakuya is mourned as a leader, Mahiru gets a memorial, and Peko lives on through Fuyuhiko's entire arc. Even Teru's absence is felt through the sheer tonal vacuum he leaves behind. But Hiyoko gets jack shit. Even Ibuki, who deserved more complexity than the quirky one, is only mourned in passing. And that's what makes this chapter's emotional aftermath feel so hollow. The game built a beautiful, terrifying narrative machine, then forgot to let us grieve the ones it crushed. It just feels like she didn't get the recognition she deserved, and she only died so Nagito could have this whole spiel about the killing school life and the killing school trip being awfully similar in deaths. But hey, it's not the worst thing in the world. So let's end with a badass line. Chapter 4, people. Time for
I'm Gundam Tanaka! Yes, Gundam Tanaka!
Chapter 4 is, in my greatly humble opinion, the most deliberate chapter in the entire game. What do I mean by that? I don't really know. Everything about the Strawberry House, Grape House setup feels awfully particular, as it embodies some familiar traits. It's claustrophobic, sterile, windowless, and there's no escape unless you kill someone. My, that sounds awfully close to another thing I went through not long ago. That's right, with everyone locked inside like it's 2020, the sequel! Danganronpa recreates the suffocating tension of Hope's Peak. But worse, because this time Monokuma isn't asking anyone to kill. He's not even asking us to get away with it. He's forcing us to do something. And that something is, you guessed it, is to kill. Starvation becomes the chapter's silent killer. It's a physical debuff, something you feel building in the background of every interaction you have. And it's here the game pulls off something exceptional. It makes you expect the worst. It primes you to anticipate a desperate, feral, panic-driven killing, only to flip the script with a death that feels calm and almost respectful. And I'll be honest and blunt about this one. They were totally setting up Akane as the prime suspect. No one in this cast is defined more by their connection to physical needs than her. She loves food, she loves training, and she loves the sunshine. Now, what are you gonna do? Eat soot? Train in the final dead room and pretend the sun's still here? Of course not. So, you know, and this fucked up little game knows that expectation off by heart, and so it pushes it further. Akane is like, man, this is kind of terrible. I'm well close to, I could never do that. And not to mention, she's practically been background noise up to this point, and so it's easy to assume her arc is building to a tragic climax. You brace yourself for a crime of desperation. Then here comes Nekomaru, now returned as Mechamaru, the loud, proud, barely human tank who still feels deeply human somehow. We're encouraged to cling to him emotionally, because something in the back of our minds is already whispering that he won't last. His bond with Akane is strong, his strength is unmatched, and he's designed with only one failsafe, the good night button. That's it. There's no Zelda weak spot you can hit with an arrow, though that would have been sick though. Yeah, one simple shutdown switch, and knowing Danganronpa, we know that's going to come into play at some point, so you start connecting the dots. Akane is starving, Nekomaru is the toughest body in the room, and they have a good bond. Something has to give, and the longer the daily life segment goes on, the more sure you are someone's about to crack. But then the game hits you with a twist. Nekomaru is already dead, not at the hands of a starving, desperate student, but because of a carefully planned duel between equals. It's pretty smart, not because it's complex like the earlier cases, but because it takes your own fear, your own emotional forecasting, and it turns it back on you. The murder isn't malicious in any way, it's just the inevitable tragic outcome of a respectful situation. And when you realise what really happened, it doesn't feel like relief. It feels heavier than any desperation-fueled crime ever could. because there's a hell of a lot more to think about. Now, I know you can't wait for it, so let's just skip to Gundam.
Open sesame pandemonium!
Gundam's reveal genuinely stumped me. Not because of that cleverness, but because of what it meant. It felt like a philosophy lesson, and in the weirdest way, it made complete sense for him. The eccentric madman with a flair for the dramatics and a monologue for every occasion was the only one brave enough to kill with intentional meaning. I already adored him up to this point. Gundam was this odd ray of hellish sunshine in a game drowning in blood and despair. He never once felt condescending to me. He was obnoxious, sure, but in that lovable, I'm so far gone, I loop back around kind of way. And when the new update reveal dropped, and they added a patch that peeled back the persona just enough to explain why he did what he did, I felt it in my chest. Also, 50 gigabytes, are you mental? It's morally confusing as hell, but strangely noble. Let's list this shit. Gundam created a plan, but hoped it wouldn't be needed, built in an escape clause letting Nekomaru walk away at any time, fought on equal grounds, won reluctantly and enacted his plan, designed the case to be interesting but never malicious, and was willing to admit guilt if they couldn't solve it. He didn't do much to hurt us as a group, really. He simply challenged Nekomaru to a final duel, an honourable clash between two warriors, and when he emerged as the victor, he saw the rest of us as worth saving. That was the plan all along. One life for many, a necessary sin, and as a man born from an angel and a demon, it's not too out of the ordinary for him, is it? It's not a clean justification by any means, but it's an intentional one, I guess. And what separates Gundam from so many other killers in the series, he never tried to escape the consequences. He just didn't want us to rot in the dark. And here's an outlandish thought I had. He made the case interesting on purpose. Now listen, he wanted us to think, to feel alive, to live even in the face of death. That's why he kept up the act, why he spoke in riddles, and why he never once insulted or turned on us. He was being Gundam, because that's all he had left. He was pushing his values onto us, yes, but not cruelly, passionately, as if to say live fully or don't live at all. And he admits to the crime, which is mad in itself, but he also doesn't freak out or fight back in any way. The man accepts his fate and goes out in the most theatrical, over-the-top, emotional mic drop he can muster. He never breaks character, because this was his choice, through and through. That's why I can't bring myself to hate him. I've said it before, but my real resentment towards a killer doesn't come from the act of murder itself, it comes from the cover-up. From the cowardice of blaming others, letting people die in your place, pretending it never happened. Teru, Peko, Mikan, they all had motive, sure, but they hid. They let the trial drag on until they were forced to confess. Gundam didn't. He always planned to admit it if he got close, and until then, he gave us a damn good mystery to solve, as that's what it means to live. He made it complex to honour the battle he fought, while letting us teeter the line between life and death. And damn, if him covering up the crime is somehow noble, what can't this man do without consequence? I have a list. And then there's the question of why. Not why he did it, but why Nekomaru? That shit was deliberate as hell in the most obvious ways. Of all people Gundam could have challenged, he chose the one person who wouldn't shy away from death. The one man who had already laid down his life once before. Nekomaru was strong, resilient, and unlike the rest of us, not yet suffering from starvation. He had the will and more importantly the ability to stand tall until the end. To Gundam, that mattered. He didn't see Nekomaru as a victim, he saw him as a kindred spirit, a fellow warrior, someone who understood what it meant to act in the face of death. Because to Gundam, inaction is the real crime. Starving in silence, refusing to kill, refusing to live, that's not noble. That's pathetic to him, if anything. Waiting for despair to take you without lifting a finger is betrayal of life itself. But fighting and risking everything, taking action, even a violent one for the sake of others, that's meaningful, that's living. In Gundam's eyes, Nekomaru had already died once, and this second chance was a fluke. And if he was just going to waste it by rotting away in a cage with the rest of us, then Gundam would force him to honour that second life, with a duel. On equal terms, of course, one man starving, one running on oil. Somehow, Mr. No Cheap Shot won. Impressive. And that's why I don't see Gundam's choice as heartless, because he chose and he fought with respect. Unlike others, he didn't hide the knife, Mr. Komaida. He offered it, and when it came down to it, both of them agreed to the terms. That doesn't make it clean or make it okay, but it does make it different. In the end, Gundam, Tanaka, and Nekomaru Nidai, I'm gonna do that line again. In the end, Gundam, Tanaka, and Nekomaru Nidai weren't enemies. Come on. They were two men with opposing philosophies locked in a battle to define what it meant to live with purpose in a world full of despair. And Gundam, in all his weirdness, died not just as a killer, but as someone who believed he was doing the right thing. He's not inexcusable, but in a killing game full of liars, manipulators, and cowards, he's about as moral as it gets. It's a weird thing to say about a fictional killing, but Gundam's duel with Nekomaru feels almost sacred. It was an end-of-the-world chess match between two brothers in arms, and in that, I don't see a villain. I see someone who believed he had nothing left to give but himself. Well done, buddy. Rip Gundam, and a hell yeah to Nekomaru from the pearly gates. We need to cut the crap. This shit's getting too long. See, I'm not asked about how long this video is, but I am asked about your enjoyment. If you made it this far, you're willing to sit through more monologues about daily life and setting up the crime. Yet still, I simply cannot do that this time, because this case is too perfect to lead up to. I must speak about it now. Chapter 5, everyone. He died. I have nothing to say about the lead up to Nagito's case. Plenty goes on, but it all pales in comparison to what follows, because this, my friend, is possibly the best Danganronpa trial I've ever played. Maybe the best in the series, I don't know yet. Part of that is thanks to one single emotion, a physical reaction this scene forced out of me, and that's a wince. Physically reeling back, recoiling in disgust. Nagito's body isn't just found dead, oh no, it's found desecrated, tied up and bleeding from multiple wounds, his face contorted into an expression so horrifying it doesn't look human anymore. Danganronpa rarely indulges in shock value. Even when characters die, it's often theatrical, stylized, almost bloodless in a strange way. But this was different. This was the first victim I looked at and felt sick from sheer discomfort. It felt like I was staring at something I shouldn't be allowed to see. And that's what made it so effective, because the moment you see it, you know something's wrong. This wasn't a murder for revenge or escape. This shit was planned. Every stab wound, every detail, it was precise and painful. Torture isn't just about causing damage, it's about extending the suffering without killing too quickly, using methodical methods to do so. This was someone deliberately trying to keep him alive through hell. Or so it seemed. Because then the trial starts, and the threads begin to unravel. Nagito's words and his ideology and all that. His obsession with hope, it all comes flooding back in. This wasn't a murder or a suicide, it was both. It was a suicide designed to look like a murder, with the added twist of it actually being a murder, all to accomplish one insane goal. Reveal the traitor. You're not gonna believe me when I tell you, the bastard did it, and thank goodness. He better had for all the pain he went through for it. The genius of this trial is how it reflects everything Nagito has ever been, a man so consumed by the idea of hope that he'll plunge himself into despair to achieve it. He's unpredictable but never irrational, and everything he does, it's all rooted in the beliefs we've seen brewing since chapter 1. Even his bad luck, those offhand comments he always made, I'm rather unlucky today, turn out to be central to his final plan. He used his own death as a weapon, and we never saw it coming. Now, I usually hate the haha, they're so smart because they know your every move trope. It's cheap, overdone, let's be honest, but with Nagito, it does work, because he's not trying to win like anyone else like this would be. All this man wants to do is lose in exactly the right way. Just a snake slithering through the craps, taking every jab he can, rattling his tail, coiling around your neck, rearing his fangs, but never striking, never strangling, and never biting. He just hovers there, has you caught in a compromising position only he can get you out of, only he can take advantage of, yet he never does. Until now. This was his bite, and boy was it lethal. The real twist, though, is even when we've solved everything, we haven't, right? Have we, heck? Because this is the first time in Danganronpa history where the truth can't be definitively proven. In the end, we're left with one final question we cannot answer. We don't know who killed Nagito, we can only guess, and that's exactly what he wanted, a mystery that cannot be solved, because win or lose, live or die, the traitor would be revealed. That was his true goal, and he achieved it. His plan in all its madness worked. The traitor stepped forward, and in doing so, they set the stage for everything that would follow. Nagito won. Truly, even after everything, he got the last laugh. No matter how you view it, the events that unfolded, the ultimate hope shining through, its influence rippling outward, culminating in the ultimate defeat of Junko Enoshima, only happened because of Nagito. There's no way to know whether he expected the traitor to speak up, or if he was prepared for them to stay silent and let the rest die and preserve their secret, but what matters is simple, right? His goal was completed. Give me a second, I wrote a cool line in my notes, and don't double tap to skip 10 seconds, you bastard, I see you. Imagine fighting your arch nemesis only for your closest ally to stab you in the back. You're powerless, at their mercy, and they just smile. They could finish you off in one fell swoop, but they don't. They leave you to live, you recover and nurse yourself back to health. But from that moment on, everything that follows stems from their choice to spare you. And now, no matter what you accomplish, you're forced to live with the knowledge that the person who betrayed you is also the reason you're alive. There it is. Sick monologue there, Cryptid. Sick! Put that in the comments. Anywho, Nagito lit the match and burned himself alive to prove a point. You can hate him, you can fear him, you can scream at your screen and curse his name for all I care. That's, jeez, come on. But you can't deny one thing. He won. And after everything, after Nagito's trap had sprung, his hope worked. Fucking, why did the hope work? The traitor was revealed. And it was her. Chiaki Nanami, the only one in this entire goddamn death game who consistently made things feel okay. It turns out she'd been the traitor the entire time, and through some mysterious fragment of her own programming, she managed to all but confirm it. She couldn't outright say it, not without alter ego sniping her 500 meters away, but somehow, in a way no words ever could, she told us. And when we realized what we were being asked to do, we did it. We voted for her. Chiaki Nanami, the kindest person in the group. Was she working for the enemy? The Future Foundation is supposed to be the world ender, right? Monokuma certainly hates them, and yet Monokuma's the villain too. The lines blur so fast you can't tell which way is up, and that's the most tragic part. We don't get clarity, we don't get time to decide what we believe, we get minutes, moments to decide how we see her. And in those moments, it's not about logic anymore, it's purely about trust. Not trust in her mission or her role, but trust in the person you've come to know. You have to ignore the implications. You have to ignore the fact that she might have been working against you, because the only question that matters in that moment is, did you care about her? And if the answer is yes, if you still trusted her even now, then what was there to decide? There was no betrayal, no mastermind, just a friend. One who stood by us, one who smiled right to the end and never once asked for anything back. Just that same quiet smile, and then she was gone. This wasn't some neatly packaged trial with a culprit and a motive you could actually grasp. It wasn't about right or wrong or even survival at this point. It was about where you stood, what you chose to see. It challenged you to let go of everything you thought you knew about structure, about logic, about how stories are supposed to unfold, and just feel it for what it was. Not a puzzle to solve, but a goodbye. Forget the facts, it said. Do you love her? It said. Then watch her die, it said. It's the most just there moment in the game, because for once it doesn't matter how real she is, it doesn't matter if she's a mole or a traitor or a living prophet sent from the Lord above. All that matters is how you saw her, how Hajime saw her, and no matter how tangled the law got, she never broke. She never turned around and went ta-da and revealed some monstrous true self. She was always Chiaki, even when she died, and her execution in classic Monokuma fashion, twisted, fucked up, and oddly ironic, and pretty funny. Somehow fitting. It hurts in that sharp, quiet way, not because of the violence, but because of what it represents. Chiaki never fought back. Her programming told her to run away, but when she was finally caught for good and that code couldn't use its failsafe, there was only the human left behind. And she just accepted it. Accepted that we trusted her enough to do what we had to do. And in doing so, she proved that trust wasn't misplaced. Her final act was one of complete, utter grace. Right, people always say you shouldn't get too attached to fictional characters, that it's just a story, that you're allowed to cry but not too much, you're allowed to care but not feel it. But in this moment, This was the first time a game didn't just allow me to care, but demanded it. It asked me to become Hajime, to forget that it was fiction, and to kill someone I loved because I had no other choice, and then sit with that. These sick bastards. And the reason it did so is quite simple, because that's what it means to grieve someone, even if they weren't real. I've never been so intentionally pulled into fiction before. It wasn't just me caring too much. In fact, it was specifically designed to make me care too much. And goddamn, it worked. Man, Chapter 5 was a whirlwind, wasn't it? Well, where else to go from here? Is Chapter 6 even worth talking about? The whole world crumbling and revealing itself as fake? Is it too much? I wrote so much, should I even continue? Who cares? If this video goes on 3 hours, it's your fault, and you deserve it. Get on with it then, but I need a change of scenery, and an intermission. Yeah, this is what I meant by a change of scenery. Chapter 5, it's here, and don't worry, there's no whole spiel about Danganronpa depression disease like last time. This is more, appreciation? Anywho, I've not spoken about him yet, so let's get this lad out of the way before we close in on the finale. Hajime Hinata. At first, I assumed Hajime would be another run-of-the-mill self-insert, like Makoto before him, and I think it's pretty fair to assume that, but Danganronpa 2 quickly made me realise something. While I love Makoto, he's the ultimate self-insert. Hajime is the ultimate protagonist. Makoto often felt like a vessel, a cipher. I was the one connecting the dots, and he was just the body I was puppeting around. Sure, when it came to things like his relationship with Kyoko, I'd start to see him more of a character, someone I could root for from the outside, but Hajime always felt like someone. Not a blank slate or a puppet, he was his own person. I wasn't controlling him, I was sitting beside him, I was his conscience, whispering suggestions while he made the final calls. And of course, reveal time that the mysterious ultimate title, previously reserved for the most powerful talent in the original game, I'd say, the ultimate detective, was just a smokescreen. Hajime had nothing. He was just a kid from the reserve course, and that twist reframed quite a bit. It didn't make him more relatable in a self-insert way, but it made him more real, more tragic, especially watching how Nagito's ultimate look, something I originally wrote off as the series' most benign Makoto core talent, got twisted into something actively powerful, even supernatural at times. In comparison, Hajime was literally just a guy trying his best. And the more I learned, the more that normalcy hurt. Hajime's arc isn't about being the mirror of the player, it's about being a witness to that pain and that struggle and watching him keep going anyway. But then we get to the second reveal, because you can never have too many, I imagine. The one that shattered what I thought I knew about him. Go on, he wasn't just a reserve course nobody, was he? He was also Izuru Kamakura, the most powerful engineered human in existence. The irony is brutal. Hope's Peak took a normal, directionless kid and turned him into an emotionless talent hybrid superhuman as part of their warped experiment to manufacture hope. The result? A tragedy, one about 10 times more personal than whatever the kaiju Monokumas were pulling worldwide. Hajime lost everything, his identity, his dreams, even his right to exist as himself. He became a blank slate with limitless talent and zero purpose. Izuru doesn't even acknowledge the trauma. He is the trauma! Fucking well sick, mate. And yet, Hajime fights back somehow. Even though his body has changed, even though his mind has been overwritten, Hajime claws his way to the surface and chooses not to disappear. He doesn't want to undo Izuru, he knows that's impossible. Instead, he merges with him. He takes Izuru's strength, his foresight and his power, and fuses it with his own humanity, emotions and willpower. He becomes the true ultimate hope, not because someone made him that way, but because he refused to become anything else. He saw what he could become and made a different choice. And that's the most gut-wrenching part of it all. Hajime will never be the same. The kid we played as for the entire game is virtually, gone. His body has been altered, his brain tampered with, and even though he wrestled back control, that victory came at a price. He's still Izuru, he's still a lab experiment, and yet, somehow, Through sheer willpower, he chooses to use that pain to move forward. He chooses to live. That's what makes Hajime Hinata so compelling. All about that defiance, motherfucker. He becomes someone worth following, not because of what was done to him, but because of what he refused to let that do to his heart and who he is as a person. In the end, he forges a talent on his own by staring into the abyss and choosing to hope anyway. I love Hajime, but you know who I don't love but kinda do? You guessed it, Juko fucking Enoshima! Nagito Komaeda, badum bopap dum dum. Oh wow. Nagito. What can I say that hasn't already been said? Nagito Komaeda is one of the most fascinating characters in the series because he's so many things at once that trying to define him feels like trying to trap air in your hands. He represents contradiction in its purest form. He wants to be nothing. He chooses to be Hajime, in a sense, just a regular, talentless kid who can support others from the shadows, a stepping stool, and that's it. Couldn't even muster up the courage to at least be a ladder. But here's the fucking movie reference. He clings to his talent like a lifeline. He wants to be humble, to reject the idea of superiority, but he can't actually let go of the fact that he's the ultimate lucky student. Even before the truth about the others is revealed, you can see his subtle hypocrisy start to form. He tells himself he's talentless, but deep down he likes being chosen. He likes the idea that maybe he's a little special. And once that contradiction takes root, it only grows. What makes Nagito so compelling is that his goal is, on paper, the most moral in the game. He wants to spread hope. Literal beam of light, bro, no kidding. Religion, man. And even further, he wants it for himself. No, not for fame. No, not even necessarily for the people around him. Not even for the limited edition Hot Topic exclusive Monokuma pop figure. But for the concept of hope. Boring! The problem is, the methods he uses to get there are some of the most horrific in the entire series. He's willing to enable murder, to orchestrate suffering, even to offer himself up as a victim or an accomplice, as long as the end result creates more hope in the long run. His moral compass is fixed on the destination, not the path, and that's what pushes him from weird anti-hero territory into outright villainy. He doesn't care about pain, only purpose. He's like a terrorist. And then comes the truth, the revelation that his beloved classmates, his shining examples of humanity's potential, were the very people who nearly destroyed the world. That's when everything changes. Just for him, nobody else. The betrayal doesn't break him emotionally or at all, really. It twists him. He just goes, ah, damn, this ain't right. And then there's a new ideology on the way in 3 to 5 business days. He realizes he was wrong about everything he believed, and in true Nagito fashion, he pivots immediately. If his friends are tainted, then someone else must be the new symbol of hope. And who's left? The traitor. The one person everyone else refuses to trust. So what does he do? He builds an entire death trap to prove it. That final case, right? Nagito's self-whacking, his grotesque, calculated torture, and the moral chess game he plays from beyond the grave is a masterstroke of storytelling. Did I just say self-whacking? Because in the end, Nagito wins. I said this like 20 minutes ago, but his hope wins, right? The traitor is revealed because of him. He knew the only way to expose them was to create a scenario so specific and so absurdly over-engineered that only someone with first-hand knowledge of the truth could navigate it. He bet it all on that working, and the wildest part, he bet on luck again. The one thing he tries to downplay throughout the entire game, the very title he pretends to resent, becomes his most powerful weapon. Deep down, he always knew he was special, that his hope wasn't just a coincidence, that he was the variable no one could control. And when everything else burned down, that was the only thing he had left. He leaned into it completely, because it was the last part of him untouched by despair. In that final act, Nagito stops trying to be lesser. For once, he believes he's above us, above the traitor, above despair. Because no matter what he does, hope will prevail, and if it doesn't, then he'll burn everything down until it does. Don't try, lad. It was ego. I thought it was. But nah, it's obsession. It's terrifying. That's what makes Nagito so fascinating. He's the embodiment of how good intentions can lead you to hell. He clings to purity and becomes monstrous in the process. He worships hope so blindly that he forgets that people need to survive in order to see it. His methods are sick, his logic twisted, but his devotion is absolute. And that's what makes him so hard to dismiss, even when he disgusts you. You can't say he doesn't believe what he's doing. You can't say he doesn't mean it. He's not the antagonist, but he's not a hero either. He's just Nagito, and he scares the shit out of me. And thus, we reach the end of the game. Alas, the end is nigh. After one amazing lead up with Hope's Peak collapsing like a simulation on its last thread of code and a run-in with Alter Ego like it's 2010 all over again, we're thrust into our graduation program. The dots are clicked together like your bog standard trial until Monokuma does his little dance again. They're not really, because technically to them it's the first time, but I remember him pulling the stunt in the first game, so now I'm just sitting there going, oh great, here we go again. And then boom, Junko's back on an iPhone. God help us all. Her resurrection felt inevitable, right? But the how and why are where the intrigue lies. It's not really a whodunit anymore. The mystery now is existential. How are we here? How do we escape? How do we bring our friends back? This is no longer about murder. It's about memory, consequence, and identity. And then our friends return. Makoto shows up, but wait, he's lying? Oh, okay, sick subversion, Monokuma. Still scream like a fangirl, not gonna lie. Makoto!
It's not the Future Foundation's
Yes!
fault. Rather,
yes,
the
my
lies-
boy! Yo!
Take your time saying.
Yeah, let's go! Let's fucking go! Yes, Byakuya!
Try putting yourself in our shoes before.
Oh
you
my
drag us into
god!
situations
This is
like
Avengers Endgame! Avengers all coming together! Assemble Avengers!
You'd be better off leaving behind someone
Yes!
You're so petty. It's not like you're a housewife living on a tight budget.
That is actual Rick and Morty humor, bro. And then the real Makoto appears with Kyoko and Byakuya, and suddenly it's Peak 2, Rise of the fucking Danganronpans or whatever. Dude, what I love about Junko's reincarnation is, well, first of all, it's the absurd batshittery, but beyond that, is that she still feels like Junko. All the chaotic integrity is intact, but now it's distilled into this purely digital form, her personality unbound by physical limitations, and somehow even more dangerous because of it. She doesn't just manipulate characters now, she manipulates ideology as a thing. We're doomed, it's over. She is the problem and the solution. If we graduate, we lose the dead. If we stay, we get them back, but we never escape. Junko sells both options as victory. That's terrifying. Why would you do that? Oh, because you're evil, I get it. And what's worse, we as the player know not to trust her, but buckle my bear, Hajime doesn't. They don't either, all the other freaks. And that's where the separation becomes so obvious. This is the first time I felt powerless. I'm not Makoto anymore. I'm not even me. I'm watching someone else, Hajime, wrestle with what I already know, and he has to figure it out. It's devastating. The narrative deliberately pulls you in a state of limbo where you know the right answer but can't speak up. The only thing left is hope, not as a theme or as a gimmick, just as a desperate Hail Mary. And then, in a burst of sincerity, Chiaki returns in omnipotent spiritual form. Thank you, hero. This gives Hajime that final push. Create your own future. That line breaks me, fuck you. We've spent 6 chapters being manipulated, gaslit, and dragged through philosophical and emotional landmines, and the final answer to everything isn't logic, it's not evidence, it's not deduction, it's choice. Hajime sees the future laid before him and says, no, I choose my own. And it feels like him, the Hajime we've known this entire time, not this Izuru poser. That's what makes him the ultimate protagonist. He doesn't accept fate or inherit hope like some Sakura Ogami-ass sacrifice. The man makes it, and together, the remaining cast fires off the most ludicrous, hyper-symbolic final sequences where you're literally shooting hope bullets at despair statements and in a way, finally gathering the hope fragments as she wanted you to. And then, boom, she, Usami, shows up. Magic wand in hand, hurls herself at giant Junko with all the grace of a glitchy Sailor Moon fever dream. See, even I know how to make a decent Sailor Moon reference. Junko's massive ass 3D model on that wildly impressive 15-meter bust size starts melting like my shitty laptop on Happy Wheels. Absolute despair! Then, the button. We press it, create your own future. We win. Shutdown procedure. Bam! Makoto and the others say goodbye. Our Danganronpa 2 cast remains on Jabberwock Island to rebuild in peace, I imagine, and probably, I don't know, have an orgy? It's not my finest work. We're 2 hours in and I've not had coffee yet. And here's where I end it. In my canon, the Hope's Peak canon, those who died in the Neo World program are gone. Their deaths mattered, their absence is felt. Bringing them back would undo everything, undermine the growth, the grief, the meaning. This isn't a story about fixing everything, it's about accepting what can't be fixed and building anyway. That's what Danganronpa means to me. That's hope. And that's where the curtain falls on Hope's Peak. Oh, and also UDG, but that all comes soon enough. Just shut your face. And the game ended. And guess what? Remember last time? The pit, that gaping void Danganronpa 1 left in my soul? Not this time. I stepped away from my computer, bracing myself for the same emotional crash, but it didn't come. Had I overcome it? Nah, the grief still mattered, that heartbreak from the first game still hit somewhere, and it still taught me something, but Danganronpa 2 left a different mark, one just as deep, maybe deeper, but this time it wasn't sadness, it was happiness. I went to sleep smiling, woke up the next morning with this weird calm drive humming through my chest, sat down, started writing, and here we are. Danganronpa 2 didn't leave me in despair. It left me enlightened, motivated. It was like the post-game depression evolved into something else entirely, like the impact didn't just fade, but changed somehow. And I think that contrast helped. Because this time, instead of begging the story to come back, I wanted to take what I'd felt and make something out of it. And that's how I know this worked. That Danganronpa 2 didn't just follow up on the first game, it completed it. Danganronpa 1 taught me how to grieve what never existed. Danganronpa 2 taught me how to celebrate it. Together, they made me feel like I'd seen the whole picture, like I've been through the worst of it and the best of it and everything in between, and now I'm just thankful. And don't you worry, I'll keep going. Ultra Despair Girls is next, the goofy cousin I can't wait to hang out with. V3 is that weird non-canon sibling everyone argues about, but I've heard it stands tall on its own. As for the anime, let's just say I'll get round to it when I've emotionally recovered. And that shit ain't canon. But whatever comes next, it won't change this. The Hope's Peak saga is over, and it ended perfectly. So yeah, I woke up smiling. And you know what? Thank you, Jabberwock Island. No, thank you, Hope's Peak. Fuck it, that doesn't feel right. Thank you, Danganronpa. Danganronpa, Danganronpa.